said. That's why I follow my instructions. That's live. Let me know.
Yes, yes, yes. It is the Castworthy podcast, and we are back. It's Sunday, June 4th, Summer's Eve. I guess not really Summer's Eve, but close to it. I'm Big Steve, aka Last of a Dying Breed, on the Twitter machine, joined today by DJ, the Savage, and
Finally.
the repeat. Blah. Throw me off, man. I'm talking during the VP of research, man. It's a beautiful day. Happy Pride Month to you, VP.
Yep.
What's going on, man? Anything new?
Not much, man. Just chilling, holding it down per se and whatnot.
You guys do anything? Excuse me. You guys do anything fun for Memorial Day
Nah.
weekend?
Some of the fam came over. We just watched some TV, ate a little. We didn't do like no special cooking or nothing like that, but we
Burgers and dogs.
She made a not a pot, but like a big pan of ziti. So ate on that, watched some movies, talked some shit.
I see what's happening here.
It's coming from your AirPods. More than likely. Glad you still got a haircut, VP.
Oh yeah, man. I gotta stay fresh to death.
Oh my god, here we go. I can't do this with you. I'm not doing it. I'm not doing it. Was that new? That's a new thing, right?
What?
Fresh to death?
Oh,
that's not
man.
That's not like a Miami thing. That's like
I think we made that up in the 90s.
We
made that up.
Yeah.
It ain't come from no Miami.
Well, I heard it in Miami from a bunch of transplants from New York, which are now Miamians. So therefore,
you heard it from New York.
given the transitive properties of zip codes,
Sure.
Hey, what were you doing right before we started, VP? Like
the pod,
while we were waiting for EJ to pop in. What was it that you were doing?
Groceries.
You was ordering groceries?
Yeah.
Okay. Because I remember somebody on this pod killing me for ordering groceries, talking about, hey, bougie, look at this nigga, acting all rich. No excuses. No excuses. I know what you're about to say. No
Right.
excuses.
Exactly.
No excuses.
I want to say for the pod, it's nasty how it gets mentioned waiting for me to pop in when I was here the entire time. You just can't see me because you can't. For the record, I've been here for the 10 minutes that we've been waiting for 2 hours to start.
Yo, what was that word that Trump? Alternative facts. Was that him? Was that
Kellyanne Conway?
Kellyanne Conway?
You mean your Lord and Savior?
Whatever happened to her? Hey, listen, man. If it's Trump or DeSantis, I'm voting Trump. Can I go in and vote for the Republican nominee? Lauren?
You'd have to switch it's a closed primary in Florida, so you'd have to switch your party registration from Democrat to Republican to vote
Isn't
in the
that
Republican
how
primary.
it is most states across the country? Which states?
Most states do have closed primaries, but some allow open. Even if they're open, you only can vote in one. But in the closed primary state, you have to be affiliated with that party to vote.
Yeah, which states? I'm curious. Don't do it.
Oh, I have no clue off the top of my head. It's a few of them.
Well, when you register to vote, you have to put your race on there anyway, right?
You don't have to.
Oh, you don't?
No.
Okay, so then maybe I could pull it off. I know if I put my race, they're not even gonna send me the ballot. They're gonna be like, nah, nope.
Yeah, every cycle, on both sides, there's this plot to be like, oh, let's get a chaos candidate in there,
Bernie.
Well, not even then. Like back in 04, like the whole like Rush Limbaugh was trying to get all his people to say, "Yo, go register as a Democrat and then vote in a Democratic primary, and then vote for like whoever was like the crazy candidate that year." And people do it, but like the numbers are just not enough to make anything happen. So it'll just be more of an inconvenience for you filling out the paperwork and sending it into the county and all that kind of shit, because it's not really going to move the needle.
Does Mike Pence have any chance?
No.
All right. Let's get this.
You have about as much chance to become the Republican nominee as Mike Pence.
Yeah. No, I think he got a little bit more. He's got white hair. Well, I got white hair. He also has
all of that. This is what's happening on the Republican side, right? It's 2016 all over again. Trump has a locked-in base of like 40 or 45% of people who are diehard. They're not going anywhere. I can shoot somebody on Fifth Avenue, won't lose any support, right? Those
January
people,
6 people.
right? Then everybody else is saying, well, he's only getting 40, 45%. That means that the other, 60% or so, 55 to 60% are for grabs, right?
Can be had.
So if I could just be the last one to go head to head with him, I can be the nominee and then have a chance at being president, right? But the problem is that like in 2016, they fought it out for too long. And then by the time it gets to one-on-one, when it's Trump and Ted Cruz, there aren't enough states left for Ted Cruz to overtake Trump and become the nominee. You know what I mean? And this time, I mean, back then they had like 17 candidates. This time, I think they're up to like 8 or 9, like just under 10. And so it seems like it's shaping up to be the same thing where a bunch of people are going to get in. And the only thing that's happening this time is instead of them saying, if I could just be the last one to go against him, I think what they're hoping is that Trump's already been indicted in New York. They're hoping that he probably gets indicted in Georgia. They're hoping that the feds indict him for the documents case in January 6th. And then they make the argument of, yo, this guy has too much shit going on. We have to move on. You know what I mean? Like, aren't you tired of losing elections? And then they hope that they're the person that people see as a second choice.
I'm on the fence between Pence and DeSantis. Like, do you think Pence would have the balls if he had to debate Trump to talk about the deep dark secrets?
No. Pence is worth nothing.
I mean, he was tough to Kamala until she turned into, Big Mama real quick.
Yeah, Pence ain't, listen, this is a guy who his man's while in office told him, yo, I don't care nothing about your life. They were coming for you. We not sending nobody for you. We don't care about none of that. And the man still laid down, didn't tell his followers nothing, acquiesced to the whole movement, to the whole plan. I mean, you know what I mean? Listen, at the end of the day, this whole politics shit is a sham. All these people on either side of the aisle are just lining their pockets. But the Republicans are super nasty. You got this dude who's like, you can't even respect my office and station as the second in command of the quote unquote most powerful nation in the world, because we only powerful when we want to take some oil and tell people that we need to stabilize them, right? But everything else we can't do shit about. But this dude Pence, like, he just I think right now he's gotta be just lining up more books or talking points, because he knows he ain't got the juice to run with these guys, man. He just doesn't. They don't respect him.
And EJ's final point was exactly where I was going to go if he didn't hit that, which is,
we don't have no power.
No, Pence is lining up. Pence is running for president. He can't win. He won't win. And all it's going to do is the next time he writes a book and when he goes out on the speaking tour to start doing public speaking, it's going to raise his speaking fees. Right. That's all, because he's raising the profile, so it's going to raise the fees. That's all this is. It's a money grab for Pence because he has to know that he doesn't have a shot. And to EJ's larger point, right, is that, it's one thing to be like, yo, I support Trump. I support the work we did while we were in office during our administration, boo, 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 right? This dude allowed a mob to come to the Capitol and essentially try to hunt down you and your family, right? And it's one thing to be like, oh, well, I had the Secret Service. I was never really in any danger. They could have got me out of there at any point, all that kind of shit. And that may be the stuff he tells himself to make himself feel better about it, right? But when that mob came to the Capitol and Pence had to evacuate the Senate chamber, he was there with his wife and he was there with his children, You know what I mean? It's one thing to put me in jeopardy as the office holder while, that seems like some banana republic shit, but at least like I'm the guy, you know what I mean? But my family, and
Yeah.
Pence is still kissing this dude's ass. That tells you all you need to know about this guy.
Yeah, I don't think it. To your point, I mean that's even the fact that his family was there. I would, obviously we regard women and children in their lives, to be more sacred, but just the fact that the fabric of this institution that is the United States was at risk, and as the vice president of the United States, you're not irate. As the House of Congress, you're not irate that this happened. It
Mm-hmm.
it just to me it boggles my mind because I
Yeah.
walk past it daily and I just see thousands of tourists coming in, and you hear the sidebar conversations like, "Oh, this is where it happened," and you hear foreigners saying, that's the place," and it's just like the fabric of the United States government was literally for that day and for however long was torn down. And it just when you think about it, it's just so nasty how when you watch the black protesters and people marching in the response, and then you had people literally storm the Capitol and was not met with a certain amount of force. It just makes you wonder as a nation, like where are we really, and what are we
Yeah.
really doing, and what's important. And that's kind of where I'm coming to the point where politics to me is just becoming like white noise, because it's just like I just it out underneath all of the policies and the voting, it's about what can you do for me, and how much do you really align with my values, no matter what they are.
Yeah. And I've said this to you guys on pod in the chat multiple times. This kind of stuff always makes me, think about that thing that Charles Blow said when he's a New York Times like opinion writer, and he was on Bill Maher's show, and he was saying the Republican Party had these crazies in the party, and they keep dog whistling at them and throwing them red meat, and they think, oh, they're like the crazy uncle that you keep in the attic, and we'll just keep them riled up. We'll pull them out in October, let them go vote, and then we put them back in the attic for 4 years until it's time to vote again. And now these people have broken out of the attic and have taken control of the party. And because of that, the candidates have to keep getting crazier and crazier and crazier, right? And you look at a guy, to your point, Steve, like DeSantis, who banning books in the state of Florida, doing all this anti-gay shit in Florida, um, 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 going
Black
over,
history.
fighting with fucking Disney and shit like that. Here,
Mhm.
the largest employer in the state, and you would think that would be like blasphemy for Republicans, like going against business. And it's not just like it's some any business. This is Disney, 100-year-old company. They employ the most people in your state. They are responsible for. I read something that said Disney is responsible for something like $70 billion to Florida's
Mhm.
economy, in direct money plus direct jobs, as well as jobs that are associated with Disney but not directly from Disney, and then the tourism. You know what I mean? And he's willing to jeopardize all of that to score political points, with his base. And then in his first week on the campaign trail, he's already talking about being willing to look at pardoning people involved in January 6th, up to and including Trump. And that just kind of tells you all you need to know, like to EJ's point, to where, a guy like Pence and the rest of them, it's like, okay, I get it. I'm a Republican, they're Democrats, and we think that they're bad for the country, etc. But this January 6th stuff was a step too far. And I gotta put the flag before my party. You know what I mean? And they're like, no, we don't want to do that, because if we do that, the people who are going to be willing to vote for us are going to be upset, and they won't show up to vote, which means the person, whoever it may be, with a D behind their name could get elected. And I'd rather hitch my wagon to a bunch of terrorists than allow a Democrat to have power in this country.
Yeah, I think. Okay. Yeah. All right. Well, still on political, a couple political things. I was gonna go in more on DeSantis, but I don't have time for that right now. It's we do it every pod. Who put them sandbags there, VP? What's up with your man? Like you can't be on here all the time talking about Joe is sharp as a tack, and this nigga's tripping over sandbags that are like there's no way you would have tripped, I would have tripped, EJ would trip, like any
I
normal
don't know
like.
about me, but you know,
Well, you get you get what I'm saying. I kind of
Nasty
thought
work.
about that after I said it.
Nasty work, yo. Nasty work,
you know,
yo.
I
if we're
thought
being honest,
Disgusting work, yo. Oh my
I
gosh.
thought I did think about it after I said it. Like, it's okay. But Joe Biden took a spill this week.
Mhm.
Probably skinned his knee a little bit, turned around and started pointing at the bags. And they had to help him up this time.
Yeah,
Like it didn't look like he was gonna be able to just bounce back up like all the other times. And we've seen like when Obama was in office, like that shit took a quick toll. He went from like EJ's dark hair to my like salt and pepper, like
hmm
in a blink of an eye. And while Joe going in was running and exercising and stuff like that, I'm wondering if at this point it's starting to take a real toll. And obviously he's aging. What is he, 81,
no, I think he just turned 80,
79?
79, 80, something like that.
80, yeah, at the most 80, I think.
He just
Okay.
had a birthday like a couple months ago, so I think he either just turned 79 or just turned 80.
I think he just turned 80 at the most.
Okay. So like I
He's
don't know.
80.
He's 80. Okay. So I don't know if it's just untimely for him to be having this kind of stuff happen. He's fallen more than any president I've ever seen, yo. Like
Oh, okay. You said that I've ever seen.
Yeah, because
I'll let that one go.
he historically, I mean, but
Because Gerald Ford,
Teddy
woo,
Roosevelt was in a wheelchair and still.
man, they SNL like made a whole like it's said that Gerald Ford actually hated NBC because of they had Chevy Chase used to play Gerald Ford on SNL, and I mean they had like skit after skit after skit of like just him falling over shit because he used to just fall all the time.
but the crazy thing, I think what Steve might be alluding to, the dude is 80 years old, and for me, it begs the question of the selections coming up, and we know 50, what is it, like 50% of Democrats are like they're gonna vote for Joe just because they know that's the thing they should kind of want to do. But it's like, what is the true future of this party? And I mean, we could talk about all the potential rock stars and all this other shit because we could present somebody. Steve could be like, what about her from Michigan? She's got nice boobs. And you could be like, well,
Oh my
she's not
god!
going to get the country. So it's like, it's always something like, when as a party do we just collectively get someone who makes sense, who can represent everyone, and specifically everyone, when I say at some point the black people of this nation, um, and present them against the right. Like, when are we ever gonna figure this out as a party? Because
I
real
I
quick,
don't
mean,
like
VP.
the future.
Real quick, VP. Before you answer, there was a poll that was done on Gen Z, and I know the young vote is super important. And to
What
EJ's
generation is
point,
that again?
that's the most recent one, right?
I
These
don't know.
the ones that are just hitting like voting or starting to approach voting age. The young
yeah,
vote is kind of people think is going to make a huge difference in the future for Democrats. But there was a poll that said Gen Z um, young men don't like boobs as much as previous generations. So somebody like that would never win. To your point.
That's horrible.
wow. I was wondering where that was going, but okay.
He thought it was
Yeah,
an
I
actual thing.
I thought he
Yeah,
had I thought he had
yeah,
some
yeah.
fire take like, yo, Gen Z by 2035 they're gonna be voting like Republicans. Like, it's like what?
I do my
Man.
research, man.
Um, but now to your point, EJ, I don't think that your point is wrong, right? But it's one of the. I think what the issue is that we we mostly continue to do politics as we've always done politics, right? And so it's like your party has the presidency, nobody's going to challenge. And part of the reason why is that both parties learned this lesson already from the 1980 election when Jimmy Carter was running for re-election and Ted Kennedy, JFK's brother, Senator Ted Kennedy, challenged him in the Democratic primary, and it went to the wire, and Jimmy Carter ended up winning, but Ted Kennedy bruised him up pretty bad, and so he had a bruising primary, and then you had things that were happening in the country. Inflation was happening at the time. There was the shit happening over in Iran with the hostages. You also had oil crisis going on where there was lines of people waiting to get gas and shit like that. And all of that shit is stuff that people credit to Carter losing to Reagan. And so on the Democratic side especially, they're like, we've overlearned that lesson and we're not going there again. So when our guy is in charge, we're not going to challenge him. And
I got
I
that.
mean, that probably is a bad answer, but I think
No,
that's
no,
the
no,
reason.
I got that. I just more so question, right? Just the future. Like, what is the future? Because again, I get what you're saying, and it makes sense. And I mean, just like, what is our future as a party? Like, we know the party rock stars that we have,
Mhm.
and we know those that we can't trust. Booker, we know we can't trust him because he was scared to even fight for Jersey. And then you got AOC that she's a woman, number one, that's against her. She's a woman of
Mhm.
color. She's from New York and she speaks her mind. So even those good old boys in the Democratic Party ain't gonna like her. So it's like, what is the future of this party? What do we really have to look forward to?
I feel you. And what I would say is one person who I think Dems should give a lot of people should start paying attention to. He's probably looked at as being boring. He's not an exciting person or whatever. But the Democratic governor of Minnesota, this guy named Tom Walz or
Where
Tim
all the
Walz.
where all the black people keep getting killed at.
But what I
Right.
mean by that, what I mean is to EJ's point, right? EJ's point with what he's saying largely, at least what I'm hearing, is part of the problem for Democrats, and we've talked about this on this podcast multiple times, is that you have to show people what you do with power, right? Because every election, both parties say this, right? And this is the most important election of our lifetime. If you put us in there, we're going to do X, Y, and Z, woo, 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 woo. And then they get in there and they don't do this shit, right? And then it makes people feel cynical and like, what the fuck's the point? We putting these people in and not doing shit. My life hasn't changed, blah, 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 right? But here in Minnesota, right, they said those things. Put us in there and we're going to make all these changes, yada, 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 right? And you had a lot of gerrymandering in Minnesota because even though Minnesota is looked at as a Democratic state, they've had a Republican legislature for a while. And through some anti-gerrymandering court rulings, they've been able to kind of un-gerrymander the map just a little bit, right? And with just that little bit of victory, they end up having the governorship after this last election, the state house, and they got the state senate, but only by one vote. And since then, in Minnesota, they have legalized marijuana. They've gotten rid of cash bail. They've done huge environmental bills. They've passed workers' rights. And I mean, it's this past legislative session in Minnesota. I don't have the list in front of me. I didn't know we were going to talk about this, but they have gone like crazy. And this is with a one seat majority. You know what I mean?
And this is
And
largely due
they're
to
essentially are
your
showing
guy.
people,
This
huh?
is largely led by your guy that
Yeah.
you're talking about.
And
So as
they've
a
been showing
party, as a
him, the governor,
party,
Tom Walz,
yeah.
and a couple of black state representatives in the House side They've been pushing all this shit through, and he's just been signing legislation like crazy, but he's the governor from Minnesota. So,
But it sounds like you're saying that any Democratic candidate could probably get it done if they had the Senate and the House, right?
no,
That's
because
what
we had the Senate
I'm
and House
hearing.
last time. No, we had the Senate and House last time, and they didn't get it done. You have to have people who are willing to do shit. You know what I mean?
What was
Because
last time who was president?
when Joe first took over, Democrats had the House and the Senate and the presidency.
Wow. Well, then Joe is a piece of shit.
You're right, Joe Manchin.
Oh. Now, so tell us. All right, we got a couple more minutes on politics before we get out of here. On that, what talk about the debt ceiling? That was completed. That was signed by Biden yesterday. Deadline is tomorrow. What are some big takeaways that people should know? And talk about a little bit. I want if you've done the research, which I'm sure you have, because that's probably all you've been reading for the last 24 hours. Um, I want you to talk about the stuff that sticks out that people are saying is bipartisan, that someone who might support Joe, myself, EJ, or someone who might be on the fence can look at and be like, they took Joe to the cleaners, but it may not be that big of a deal, like the student loan thing that you clarified yesterday.
So the first thing with the debt ceiling is one thing that Joe.
Oh, and why was it such a big deal for him to make sure it got done? Like, why did he have to kind of give up some room?
So the debt ceiling, like to put it in like layman's terms, like for like stuff in our own lives. Imagine the debt ceiling is like, you get your credit card, right? You got a $20,000 limit, and you go and you run up the whole 20,000, and then next month when the bill comes, you say to the credit card company, you say, hey, Bank of America, I know I use this whole $20,000, but I've set a personal debt ceiling for myself of 10 grand, so I can't pay anything over 10 grand. And you're telling them you just got to deal with it. That's essentially what the debt ceiling is that the government has passed budgets, they've passed spending bills, they've spent this money, and now it's time for the bill to be paid. And if they don't raise the debt ceiling, they're essentially telling the people that we've borrowed this money from, other countries, bondholders, things like that, saying, hey, I know that we spent $22 trillion or whatever the number is, but I've set a personal debt limit for myself of 20 trillion. So you got to just eat that 2 trillion I borrowed. That's essentially what the debt ceiling is.
You said imagine, like that ain't real. That's reality for me. The only thing you got wrong is Bank of America.
But I mean, for a country, you can't declare bankruptcy like a person. You can't be like, hey, I got to go to Chapter 7. Like your economy would fall apart. And because the United States is the largest economy in the world, it would be detrimental to the world's economy, not just the United States. So that's why that was such a huge deal.
We'll
Like there were
just
estimates saying that
declare war for some other reason and just go steal resources like we always do.
Like
Nothing to
there
see
there
here.
were reports coming out of the Treasury Department saying that if we blew through the debt ceiling, the country was going to immediately go into recession and the stock market would drop by like 45%. Like this was going to be like instantly. You know what I mean? So like we're talking about a huge crash, which is why this shit is important. And the debt ceiling has actually never been a thing until 2010 when the Republicans took over and they used it as a way to punish Obama to get a bunch of policy concessions. And that's what's happening here again. The only since Obama, we haven't been able to have clean debt ceilings. We have to keep having these fights or whatever. When Bush was president, they passed the debt ceiling. It was a one-page bill that had one line that essentially said the debt ceiling was X, is now Y, and then passed by the House, Senate. He signed it. Done. Now we have to go through these fights and shit.
What's the key takeaways you would say from what you saw in the bill that was signed?
So one of the things that's getting, I would say 3 things. The first, which I think is a huge win for Joe, is that typically when they raise the debt ceiling, they raise it by a number. So they'll say, it was X, it's now Y. And then once you start approaching Y, you got to start having this fight all over again. But what Joe was able to get negotiated with them was instead of changing the number, they essentially just suspended the debt ceiling until 2025. So the numbers itself don't matter because it's the number is just suspended until we get to 2025, and then they'll have to have this fight again. So that's a good win for him because you never know how much money you're going to have to spend if there's like an emergency like COVID, for example, right?
Right.
So that was a huge win. The student loan thing is another one that's getting a lot of attention. Is that as part of the debt ceiling bill, it's going to restart payments for student loans. Joe had already announced that he was restarting payments for student loans, but it was going to be like 30 to 60 days after the Supreme Court rules on his student loan forgiveness program. They were going to be restarting the payments anyway. This just essentially puts that into law. That also doesn't really mean anything. It's one of those things that Republicans can take to their voters and say, this was a victory. But under the HEROES Act, Joe Biden or any president has the right to suspend payments. So he can just say, I'm declaring another emergency and suspend payments if he wants again in the future. So it's kind of like a win, on paper, really.
What's the statute of limitations on that? Like, if I know he said he was going to do it, but like this, listen, he needs to make a big splash, or I think the Democrats are in trouble this next election because especially if Trump gets the nod from the Republicans. And student loans is probably going to be the biggest splash he can make. Like, we talk about it all the time. I think EJ, has been on the side of it, and the two of us, we try to be as middle of the road, if you will, even though sometimes it sounds like we're on the other side, but that's because we got to even you out. But the Ketanji Brown, right? The stuff like that doesn't stick out to the average Joe. No pun intended, right? Like, for you, that's great. For VP, that's great. For Eric, that's great. For Mark, you guys that are plugged in and pay attention to politics, that's big. But for the average voter, which is the people that they're gonna need, you're gonna have, again, the Gen Zs, the younger voters. They're gonna go towards, a little bit towards Democrats because they're all they're for the they them, for the LBGTQ plus IE community, right? And that's a win for them. But the people that are not in tune with that and are looking at something else, where's Joe gonna make like a move?
I hear you, and I don't think that you're necessarily wrong. And it's one of the reasons why I always argue about people being more plugged into the issues, because I've said this to you before. George H.W. Bush, right? Bush 41 in the 90s. He appointed Clarence Thomas to the court. He served 4 years as president and appointed Clarence Thomas to the Supreme Court. Clarence Thomas has had more impact on Americans' lives than George H.W. Bush ever had during his 4 years as president. You know what I mean?
And his son's life.
So, Ketanji Brown Jackson being on the court is huge. I mean, obviously the liberals are in the minority or whatever, right? But if at some point, if they get back in the majority, opinions that she writes on, law are going to be huge in people's lives. But it's hard to quantify that now. Saying, hey, just give it 20 years and you just watch.
Right, your kids are going to be good.
So I get your point.
I think, Steve, I think it's going to be very hard for you to reach, because I try to explain this to people that are community leaders and call themselves, or not call themselves, but are doing things for the community that they feel are good, right? So you have people that preach wealth and ownership and buying back things, right? But I'm like, how do you explain that to somebody that never had shit? How do you
Right.
explain that to somebody that doesn't understand the benefit of finances? Most of us black people, if you weren't taught well enough, you don't get it until it's damn near the middle half of your life.
Mhm.
Some people have been able to be steered to go in one career profession and make enough now to where they can start over and do different things, and they don't have children and all of that good stuff. So the thing about the politics is, how do you make it reach the average person? And I think by design it's not supposed to reach the average person, because if people really had the politicians where they were supposed to be in their everyday lives, they could touch them and say, yo, why am I living like this? Why are you allowing this? And I know VP is going to say for the Republican side it doesn't matter because they're going to vote regardless. But what we're really talking about as far as the Democrats, what happens every time? You have the Congressional Black Caucus that goes down in DC. You have hundreds of wealthy, educated, smart black people convening together to speak and look good. And they'll do a couple of community service things here and there, but are you really bringing the people into those spaces that help them understand what's being talked about? Not everyone has an idea of what the debt ceiling is. Not everyone has student loans to understand what that is. Some people are worried about the day to day. Hey, how much does gas cost? Hey, why is my housing going up? Worrying about the everyday shit. And I think because the way that the system is designed and the way that it's always been is business as usual, the elite class of thinkers and educated people will always have the one up and understand, because it's not meant for the everyday person to truly understand, because there's a lot of manipulation in politics on both sides. And
I,
that's the truth.
I actually agree with that. You know, um,
What up, Chris?
I
What up,
agree with that.
Chris?
You know, it's yeah. What up to Chris? Yeah, I don't think it's designed for the everyday person, right? I mean, if even if you think back to this country's founding, just to vote, you had to be a landowner. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So it was like,
Mhm.
hey, if you don't own land, you know, if you don't, they basically looked at it like if you don't got skin in the game, you don't get it. You don't get a
You
vote,
can't, you
right?
don't matter.
So because you don't pay taxes, you don't got no land. So why the fuck do should you have a voice? You know. So
Mhm.
so I think EJ is correct on that. It's that on what I would argue though on the Republican side, when I would say, I wouldn't necessarily just say it doesn't matter. They're going to vote one way. I agree with that point, but I think largely that on the Republican side, at least, they've convinced a lot of their voters to vote against their own interests, right?
Mhm.
The problem for them is though is that on the other side, the people who say that they support those interests don't show up all the time and get shit done for those people. You know what I mean? So it's kind of like you're kind of having a problem on both sides. Where it's like on this one side, these people don't support my interests, but they support other shit that I like guns and being anti gay and all that kind of shit like that. But on the other side, you know, these people, I look at them as being communists and all other kind of crazy shit, and they're too woke and they're gonna indoctrinate your kids, and your son's gonna be your daughter when they're 3 years old and all that kind of bullshit that they preach or whatever. And it makes those same group of folks stay away from the other side as well.
Yeah. So, all right. So, as part of that, you talked about the student loan payments restarting. What other wins would you say Republicans could say they got out of that deal?
The work requirements. So on a SNAP or food stamps, the SNAP program, they basically um the work requirements like ended at age 50, I think it was. Yeah, age
Hmm.
50.
It was 50.
And now they bumped those up to age 55 to where you got to have work requirements to qualify for SNAP. So they will sell it as essentially, oh, some guy who's 52 can't just sit on his couch and collect food stamps. He's going to go out and have to look for a job and that kind of thing like that. But the CBO, or the Congressional Budget Office, when they scored this bill, so they score every bill that Congress passed to say like what the economic impact will be, and they say that by changing those work requirements is actually going to add billions of dollars to the deficit, because instead of those people just qualifying for SNAP, they're going to have to go through this whole shit of trying to go find work, which then is going to make them have to use other government programs to
Hmm.
essentially go try to find work and shit. So it's going to just cost the government more money. And we're talking about people who are like over the age of 50 or whatever. And most of those people who are getting that money are people with like disabilities, whether they be mental health issues or physical issues or both, right? So it's not just as simple as saying, you know, these people are sitting on their lazy asses and they're collecting food stamps, my tax dollars, woo, 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 right? And I think a lot of stuff when you have these programs like that, what happens is some guy sees a person buying ribs in the store in the supermarket with food stamps, and they're like, "What the
There we
fuck?"
go.
You
I
know,
don't I don't think this is a major blow though. I think of all the things that they could have won, because the system, I've worked in this system personally, and the system is largely like this now, and it is extremely difficult for people to navigate through. But
Hmm.
people with disabilities are largely protected from this type of stuff, whether they're going to have Medicaid or other things. So I think actually, to your point, I think this is actually a win for Joe, because while they think they're doing something and hurting people, which, of course, there are going to be consequences to this for a lot of people. I don't think this was a major win for them. I think they think it
Well,
is, but I don't think it was.
I agree with you, right? Because also these work requirements, they're not permanent. They're going to be suspended in 2025.
And
So
there's also gonna be things that you got to operate within that. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
it's not gonna apply to everybody. So, and I
right.
mean, they
But
probably are hurting their base more than they think.
part of the problem also with this is that it's the fact of, so the way people get hurt in this kind of thing, right?
It
Is
it
that,
it
and you
feels
are
bad.
right.
It feels
No,
bad.
no,
That's
it's
what
not
it
even
is.
that it feels bad, but and to your point about hurting their people more, right? Because states like Mississippi, huge food stamp recipients, right? A
Mhm.
lot of these like
Yeah,
white
Brett Favre.
Republican communities are getting a shit allegedly are getting a shit ton of
Food stamps.
welfare assistance,
Yeah.
right?
Hmm.
And but the way that people get hurt is that, okay, Biden signs this bill on Friday. It has to go through all the departments that are impacted. They review it, yada yada yada. Let's say 90 days goes by. This shit is out of the news. They start sending out letters. People don't be checking their mail all the time.
Your
So now
benefits
you
are gonna
don't
get
get
cut
that
off.
letter or you ignore it. And then all of a sudden your shit gets cut off because you don't know that
Hmm.
things have changed, right? You're that 52-year-old person who don't
Hmm.
know that this shit, something you haven't had to do in however many years,
Hmm.
now you all of a sudden have to do, but you don't know you got to do it. Then your
Right.
shit gets cut off, and now instead of them saying, "Hey, you got to do the work requirements," now you say, "Okay, cool, let me get on that." No, you're out the system, and you got to start over, and
Yeah.
that's where the problem comes in. At you know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, but it is, I mean, this is what it's always been, as far as welfare goes in this nation. It kind of is what it is. Like, it kind of just is what it is. I don't think that was a huge win for them. And to some degree, it is what it is. Like, if you're 50 plus and you're seeking government assistance and you're not disabled, etc., I think Americans do have a right to want you to go out there and try to better yourself. Maybe that's the conservative part of me, but
It's you don't think it's a little late at 50 to be like,
uh,
because some people, I think more inner city, right? That's who I think this is targeting. I'm thinking Baltimore. I'm thinking, Bridgeport, Connecticut. I'm thinking the hoods, right? Down here, Eatonvilles, right? M- A lot of them is, you know,
on the corner,
one Thanksgiving away from losing a foot. You know what I'm saying?
on the corner.
And so to be like, oh, by the way, you need to get up and go try and seek work. Um, that's a big ask, man. That's a big ask. So that's who I think this targets. What
I
when you
agree.
talk about it, when you scale it, big, huge scope, whether it's going to be impactful or it's a win or a loss. I think you could say it either way, but I think truly the people that are impacted most is us, right? It's black people, it's inner city people.
And
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 I
and
think that was the intention, I think, of the
Hmm.
party, to do that. And that's why it feels bad. That's why on the surface it looks bad. And I mean, essentially, it'll probably affect their base more than anyone. But, again, again, the conservative in me is like, okay, should we keep giving Uncle Leon food stamps to do nothing and be on the corner?
To get more
So
Oreos.
to do just so it's somebody's got to win, somebody's got to lose. That's the political society that we're in. And if you're talking about student loans versus telling them go to this work program that they're going to have to be in for 12 months and give people to run around and not show up, the shit that I've seen happen daily, it's such a, I don't know, man. It's when you talk about our people, and Steve, to the larger point, our people being hurt by that, it's such a deeper thing that we have to really focus on as a people, to the education, to the understanding of what this government is doing and what it isn't doing. Because if we continue to have that dynamic, we're gonna lose either way, whether the age gets pushed up whether other safety nets are put in there, we're losing. We're losing a fight that we don't see is happening, and we're just losing, and that's the problem.
And I don't necessarily disagree with what you're saying, EJ. But the thing that I always come back on, and this
Wow.
kind of goes to Steve's point about, how much are people paying attention, right? Because when you think about the Uncle Leons, to your point, right? Those people are few and far in between when we talk about percentage wise, right? When they talk about fraud, waste, and abuse in government programs, those numbers are usually like less than 5% of people. Sometimes in SNAP, they've done studies that show that the fraud, waste, and abuse in SNAP or food stamps is like less than 3%. You know what I mean?
Mhm,
Now, 3% does equal millions of people, right? When you think about, I think there's something like 50 million people in the country who are on SNAP, right?
mhm.
But in the grand scheme, we're not talking about a vast majority of people. That means that the vast majority of people who are using this program are people who actually need it. But I think that we can get caught up on, seeing people that we know in our own personal lives and say this person is abusing the system and therefore we got to curtail the system. The problem is that because of the size of the government can't ever cut with a scalpel. Any cut they always use is always a hatchet. And then you end up
Yeah,
impacting people who really are needing these programs, and then they get fucked over.
I get that, and I agree to disagree because again, when I'm talking, and I get your point, it's a very excellent point made. But when I'm talking culturally about our people and just the mindset and the ability and the know-how and the will to do better, I've worked in this field, literally handling food stamps, then moving to the work program, then moving to the daycare program. And the amount
You got a
of
food stamp plug? Because I'm willing to pay.
not anymore. But
Oh God.
and the things that you see daily just culturally, and we got to be real. Like, why are we the only people that can't be real about the bullshit that we do? You know what I
Mhm.
mean? And there's a lot of us out here doing some bullshit. Now, granted, there is, I would say, a handful of every 20 of that mother that's really grinding. She's been in a really
Mhm.
shitty situation. She's really trying to get herself together. That one brother just came home, exactly, et cetera, et cetera. But then there's the other population that of our people that are having their little cousins shoot up the neighborhood, selling drugs out the crib. You should see how Section 8 in Baltimore goes and Baltimore County goes. Some cats get like $1,800 to $2,400 to have a plushed new townhome. And it happens so often when I was also reviewing the Section 8 thing for Baltimore County. Oh, what happened? Oh, you had 5 dudes running up in there. We go up in and inspect your crib. There's no beds, there's no furniture. You don't even live here. There was a trap
Mhm.
house here. What is like, and I'm not talking about the political side of it at this point. I'm talking about culturally as a people, we're allowing them as a system to do whatever they want to do, and we're gonna be impacted by it. But at some point, boots on the ground, our politicians, our community leaders, we have to start preparing our people for better, to not rely on a system that already doesn't want us to
Right.
succeed.
Right. Yeah, I think it starts at the top. You know, when you say why are we not holding people accountable, or that's what it sounds like, um and I think it's because some have no other choice, right? What's the other option versus going out and living this way? We don't come from a line of, like, think about it. America, for black people, historically, as far back as we know, has been, against us, right? So we don't come from, we're not like Sarah, and Brock, who they grew up. You just said it, right? Half of us don't know until we're 40 years old that we're okay. Half of us aren't financially okay until 40. Like, I'm 41 years old and I'm just getting to a point after working since I was 16 to be like, yo, I'm good. Like, if I want to go on a vacation, I go on a vacation. Like, I could spend right now, right? And I'm 40. You know what I'm saying? Up until now, though, like, what if I had given up? What if I didn't push forward? Not everyone has that will. Not everyone has, the support systems and stuff like that. So I get what you're saying, EJ. And I think Chris is asking the same thing that we talked about earlier, VP, and we kind of harp on pretty heavily. And he says, the way people are thinking, living their regular life, haven't seen any effects of the bullshit that they're talking about. Um, you know, Explain who's getting hit hardest, and are they aware, even though it's happening right in front of their face. And I think that's the key, right? That's what you were saying, BP, is people need to be a little more aware of some of the policies, right? I'll let you
Yeah.
address that.
No, I mean, I think that he's right. I mean, there's shit that happens every day in your lives, but a lot of people don't see it. You know what I mean? From the time that you're born to the time you died, you wake up every morning to the time you go to bed, the government is involved in your life. But most of the shit that they're doing, you don't see. Stuff like, the environment. Like, when the last time you seen a nuclear power plant fail? You know what I mean? Like, that's the
In
government at
America
work.
or in China?
Right. But I mean that's the government at work, right? So shit like that. You know what I mean? But when the last time you seen a plane crash or whatever. So those kind of things are the things that are kind of impacting you daily, but people don't care about that kind of shit because that stuff doesn't impact how I put food on the table. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But there are things that government do, right? Like, for example, when Biden passed the CARES Act, right? The STEMI program that he did when he first came in office, as part of the CARES Act, they put in there those checks that you were getting for your kids to help with whatever. You know what I mean?
Oh,
I
a
think it was
little
like,
extra.
yeah, I
Yeah.
think it was like $150 per kid. I think if your kid was a certain age, it was 150, and if they were like under 5, it was like 300 or something like that. I don't remember
That
the numbers.
that was the BBL act. Because that's what all that money went to. All them bronze went and
But
got
but
BBLs with
that's my point, Steve,
But
that's where the additional community boots on the ground. That's the thing that's largely missing. It is the boots on the ground. I'm in a entirely black city that has majority black
Mhm.
politicians, that most of them have been from the city, and we still have the same fucking problems 30 years ago when I wasn't here that we have today. And it's like, even our current mayor, when he wanted to stop the violence, when he was a city councilman and he wanted to make a name for himself, he did a 300 marching, black male marching, men marching from one side of the city to the other side of the city to basically protest the violence. Since he's been mayor, has that happened? No. You would think, right now that you're the mayor, you would implement your resources and make this a focal point of what's going on. I get it. Other things happen, and shit is happening. But it's like, when you get there, you don't care about how you got there. And it's just like, you look historically as a people, we've always done for ourselves. Black Panther Party, feeding children in the morning. Oh, the government shuts it down. Now it's the WIC program. It's just at some point people have to see the value of other people, and we don't have people like a VP that are breaking down what politics means to people in the hoods. And unfortunately, our organizations that are designed to do that, a lot of them are not doing that.
right, and but to that program, right, and this like Steve is kind of making a point that I was saying earlier when I talked about fraud, waste, and abuse, right? There are people who took that money and did bullshit with it, like BBLs, took a girl's trip to
Wayne
Vegas,
Rathke.
guy's trip to somewhere, whatever, you know what I mean? But when
No
that
judgment.
program was in effect, they were doing studies on this shit, and they actually showed during that time that people were getting that monthly assistance for their children, that childhood poverty was cut in half, cut by 50% in this country, just from that one program.
You
Now, the
talking about
following
you
year,
talking about the program with the STEMIs, or the
no,
WIC
not the
program?
stimmies. When they were sending the monthly checks, when it was
Uh,
like, if your kid was, I can't remember what it was called, but it was like, if your kid was under 5, you got 300 for that
Mhm.
kid, and if the
mhm.
kid was between 5 and 17, you got 150 every month for a year. And then when it got to the end, when that program was ending, Biden asked the Congress to make that permanent. Joe Manchin, the House passed it. Then when it got to the Senate, they were trying to pass it. Joe Manchin said no and blocked it because Dems only had a 1-seat majority. So Joe Manchin blocked it, and that program went away. When they asked him why he did that in media reports, he said, counter to Steve's point, he felt like people were using that money to buy drugs. So he cut it off. Even though the studies show, studies done by the government, right, that we cut childhood poverty in half in a couple of months just by sending people a couple $100 a month. You know what I mean? And that's why I keep saying, yeah, people do take some of those funds from these government programs
No
and use
question.
them for bullshit. But a lot of the people are using these things for what they should be used for. Now, to EJ's point, he's making a larger cultural point, right? Whereas we as a society, and not as a society, but as black people, have to hold ourselves to a higher standard to say, I don't want to have to rely on the government my entire life. You know what I mean? Because that's what it's supposed. The government's supposed to be a safety net. You fall down, the net's there to catch you, and you get back on your feet and you keep it pushing. You know what I mean? But some people think that the safety net is not a net to catch you. They think it's a hammock, and they lay in it. You know what I mean?
Just hang out. Yeah.
We have to change that mindset for sure.
We have
How
to.
do we do it? I don't know, but
That's
I
the
think we
age
need to change
old.
the
That's
mindset.
the age old question. That's the age old question, and unfortunately, systemically, the government has neutralized us every time, systemically. And now, even if you were to try to be a leader of the people, you gotta fear death. You gotta fear smear tactics. You gotta fear so much because I think people take for granted the leadership that we have had, especially when you talk about a Martin Luther King and just how people talk about one versus the other. These are people that sacrificed their well-being and their lives to try to bring other people the truth about what's going on because the shit's happening right in front of us, but we just don't give a fuck.
I think it's early intervention. That's probably the biggest piece. You don't hear anyone talk about it. We right now that we know, we should be talking about it, right? VP, you should be having these conversations, and I'm not saying you don't, but you should be having these conversations. Mark should be having these conversations, right? His son is 16, 17 years old. EJ, eventually your daughter's going to get to that 15, and if you haven't already
Already talked
started,
about it.
right?
Already
You know,
talked.
that's the difference, right? We just never knew. Nobody knew. If you think about luckily, EJ, your mom was in banking, so she knew a little bit, right, or a lot of bit,
But there's still not the conversations that their generation would have with us.
right, but not the surface. That's just the surface of what the others have, right?
Hmm.
So I think that's how we fix it. We can't depend on the government. We're saying that, and it's clear. The government's not going to do it. They're to VP's point. DeSantis is blocking shit like that from not shit like that, but blocking stuff from books, right? If you put stuff in books that are going to help black people, what's the age old saying? You want to hide something from a nigga, you put it in the
Put
book,
it in the book.
right? We got
Yeah,
to start like we
that,
got to
that
we got to
that's
do
been
better.
my point. That's been my point the whole time, and I only speak that from experience because that's been my experience up until I would say the last couple of years where I haven't really been as strong in the community as I would like to be. But I mean, again, it's that's the reason. You asked the question of how do we get people to understand it on the layman's terms. You
Hmm.
have to get into their homes. You gotta meet them where they are. That is the number one rule of social work. Meet your client where they are. That is, if you can't do that, you ain't doing shit. And that's why we could talk. You could talk politics to a motherfucker blue in the face, but until like if you ever go to a Baltimore City community meeting, the one thing that'll be the same all across the city is rats, trash, and crime. They don't give a fuck about nothing else. What you gonna do about the rats though? What are you gonna do about the trash though? I just seen the dude. I remember being in a community meeting. White dude was like, I came out to cut my grass this morning and I seen a young lady giving this dude fellatio in my backyard. What are we doing about this? So
Yeah,
again, you got to meet the people where they are.
yeah. It sounds harsh. It's gonna sound harsh and rude, right? Oh my god. Shout out to
Wow.
Chris. But it's gonna sound rude and mean and harsh, but people that ask that question, and this isn't directed at you, EJ, because I think you're doing better for yourself and your family, but the people that are in those areas and they ask that question, you gotta move. You gotta get up and go. If it's not happening where you're at, and it's an all black, you know, I don't want to say
Government.
poverty area, but
Mhm.
you got to move, right? Like, move to, like, we're in Florida.
And
VP's from here, but for me, I'm in a Republican state, and
that's been that's
opportunities
been
be
the
here.
response. That's been the response of most affluent black Baltimore people that have made it and they don't come back. They like fuck
Yeah,
that. And that's the sad part.
yeah.
Yeah.
Um, Speaking of Florida, Miami. The Heat. I think your Heat are in trouble, VP.
Hmm.
I think your Heat are in trouble right now.
Hmm.
I don't know that it's like stage 4 trouble. I don't know if it's sound the alarm trouble yet. But I think y'all in trouble.
Hmm.
You don't have the size, pause, to stick, pause, Jokic. Like you don't have it.
Hmm.
What do you think? First of all, let's talk about takeaways from
Oh,
game one
shit.
of the NBA finals.
Oh, then we
What
going.
did
This
you
is.
see from
I
your
need a
team?
drink for this.
All right. Before I get started, let me also shout out to the Florida Panthers who competed in Game 1 of the NHL Finals last night. Miami stand up. They lost to the Las Vegas Golden
I was
Knights
about to mute his mic. I couldn't find it
five
fast
to two.
enough.
But yeah,
You
you know,
see,
so
he. Oh, did they lose?
yeah, they lost 5-2.
Why are we shining out
Man, they
losers?
got smacked.
I mean, in the
Yeah, that,
final, it was just that's the first time in like 15 years or something like that. So
That franchise ain't been around that long, nigga.
it has been around. It's been around like 30 something years, man.
The Panthers,
Yeah,
the Florida
Panthers were around when I
Panthers.
was when I was a kid. The Florida Panthers were around.
we're not talking
So
about the Black
They must
Panthers.
been they must been ass forever.
yeah, they weren't that good, and then they won the Stanley Cup like in the early 2000s or something. And then nothing else. They like the Marlins. They're
And I
there.
think
They
they've
win
been
every now and then.
overshadowed by the Lightning, right? Like
Right.
Tampa,
Right.
and and the Dolphins, right? Overshadowed.
Yeah. That's why I say they like the Marlins. They're there. Every now and then they stick their head up and do something, and then they kind of go back to being obscure. So, but yeah. Anyway, to Steve's question, right? I get what you're saying with the not having an answer for Jokic, right? And I agree with that. But like I told EJ, I don't know if you saw in the chat when me and EJ were going back and forth. In my mind, this game came down to free throw shooting, right? Or two things really. One, free throw shooting.
Oh
The
boy.
Nuggets had 20 free throw attempts. The Heat only had 2 for the entire game. When you look at EJ's talking about the field goal efficiency and stuff like that, the Nuggets shot 50.6% and Miami shot 40%, right? But
Under,
when you look at the
under,
total, I'm sorry.
just under 40%, I believe it
Yeah,
was.
I'd round it up, but yeah. So just under 40%. But when you look at the overall numbers, the raw numbers, the Nuggets made 40 field goals that game, and the Heat made 39 field goals. The Heat made 13 3-pointers, the Nuggets made 8. So really, this
Let's
game came
hold on.
down to free throws.
Let's not gloss over the field goal making miss. It's the Nuggets made just about the same amount of buckets, but took about 20 shots less. So that means the Heat, y'all might have made the same amount of buckets. That just means the Heat missed a lot more of them joints.
Right. I'm not arguing that they didn't miss
Can't
shots.
leave that out
I'm
though.
making no, the point that I'm making is that when it gets down to brass tacks, right? At the end of the day, regardless of how many buckets were attempted, they made one more field goal than we made. So if you had a Jeff Van Gundy type of thing where he says, we shouldn't have free throws in the game, the Heat wins that game. But we're arguing in some made up universe, whatever, right? So
Wait,
that's the
what?
first thing. Yeah, they asked Van Gundy what would speed the game up. He said, "Get rid of free throws." So
I don't even know why this dude still has a job. But go
Which
ahead,
one,
VP.
Jeff?
Van Gundy.
yeah,
Yeah, I can't.
Because he's funny.
he
No,
is funny.
no, I hate him. But keep
I
going,
like Van
VP.
Gundy, but yeah. So that's the first thing. The second thing is to Steve's point that let me not say his point because he was talking about the Boston series, but Steve had mentioned Caleb Martin cooling off. Between Duncan Robinson, Max Strus, and Caleb Martin, they scored 6 points between the three of them. So that we're talking about at the end of the game, a game that came down to, I think it was 12 points. I want to say was the final score, or 11 points, something like that. So just over double digits. I can't remember what the actual number was, but you're talking about 3 of our guys that we count on for, not huge buckets, but we count on them to put in some work. They scored 6 points between the 3 of them. I don't think that happens again. And then lastly, Jimmy Butler, who averages, almost 30 points a game in the playoffs, and he only scored 13 points. And that's your ball game, in my opinion, right there. And that's why I don't think that we're necessarily in trouble. I don't think that they were doing stuff to stop us, we were missing shots. We were getting the looks we want. We weren't hitting them.
Bam Adebayo can't be the guy who takes the most shots on your team,
I agree.
especially when the shot chart shows jump shots. Like that can't be your guy. Does Bam know that he's 6'9", like with a 7-foot wingspan? Because
Yeah.
he's shooting jump shots, right?
But he was making them.
Huh?
He was making them.
But when you sit down and you talk about any game, right? Any basketball game, I'm okay letting Bam beat me, right? If I'm the coach and I tell my team, hey, let's stop Jimmy, let's stop everybody, let's let these other guys score, I'm okay with letting Bam beat me. I'm okay with letting Bam shoot 25 shots if he's going to make 12 jump shots. Because if he gets those jump shots and he takes those jump shots, that puts your argument out the window. He's not going to be able to take free throws. They're not going to foul him because he's not a solid free, jump shot shooter, right? People don't foul on jump shots too frequently. When that happens, it's because somebody kicks their leg out or they don't let them land or something like that. You guys were not aggressive. When you talk about the free throws, you were not aggressive. Caleb Martin, who I guess because in Game 7 against Boston, he looked like Ray Allen, he decided it was jump shot time. I'm not going to the hole. He forgot his killer instinct and he looked like shit, right? Jimmy Butler, what did he take? 12 shots, 13 shots?
Like 12
That's
shots.
that's not enough, man. It's not enough. And I'm sure he's probably tired. He's been carrying y'all. And Denver was fully rested. And then he gets into the altitude. So all of that comes into play. But the point is, you can't lean on the free throws. You can't lean specifically on the free throws. Sure, they took 2, but they also weren't doing much to get them.
On the free throws.
That was your main point, though.
I made 2 points before I even talked about.
I'm gonna say this before he goes down a rabbit hole. I think the fact that they only had 2 free throws is kind of just for me for the NBA. I think that's kind of crazy.
Is Caleb Martin out tonight?
Yeah, he's out. That's what LeVar said.
I know he was on the injury report. I hadn't seen he was out.
Yeah, no Caleb. That's what LeVar said. I think for the NBA is a little crazy that there were only 2 foul shots, but I think Steve is 100% right, and that's what I was trying to make the point to you about the missing of the shots. It was too many jump shots, and Denver was just sitting back and just saying, "All right, we're gonna let y'all beat yourselves," basically in this sense. Pause. And I think the other thing that we don't realize is that Denver, we just see the 2-man game of Jokic and Murray, but I don't think we realize that on a perimeter, these guys are a much more athletic and much more defensive team than people give them credit for. You got Gordon, you got Porter. These guys are not just going. These are not your small wing defenders that are just going to play pity pat defense with you. You're going to have to actually show these guys that you can get past them and take it to the rack, and you're going to have to be aggressive every time. And I think, Jimmy is tired, and also think Jamal Murray is a better defender than people give him credit for. Although he plays a point guard position, he's guarding people 1 through 3. And so there's a lot of one-on-one basketball where a lot of other teams felt like they had to collapse and double team, and that's how you were getting a lot of kickouts to the Struces and all these other people. But there was a lot of one-on-one defense being played, forcing your less talented Miami team to have to try to create in areas they haven't had to do that before. So I don't know.
And I'm seeing on Caleb Martin, I'm seeing that he has an illness, so he missed practice. So I don't know if he's just listed as questionable because since he missed practice, they have to list him as questionable, or if he's actually out. But I mean, I'm not doubting what
flu game. Flu game coming.
But I get what you guys are saying overall, right? And
I don't think y'all in dire trouble either, for the record. I
don't necessarily disagree with what you guys are saying, but regardless of the aggressiveness, I think Jimmy definitely wasn't aggressive, right? I get your point about Bam, they made him a jump shooter or whatever, but he was knocking him down. It's one thing to say they made him a jump shooter and then that took him out of the game. They made a jump shooter and he was scoring, and Bam has a mid-range. So it's not like, he's ineffective at shooting. It's just that he usually likes to operate in the paint or whatever, But
The Heat,
Jimmy
the
not
Heat
being,
Vengers are in here today.
but but Jimmy not being aggressive was definitely a problem. But at the end of the day, like I said earlier, we the game that we wanted to play, which was kick out to Struce or to Duncan Robinson or whoever to hit for wide open threes. We got that all day. We just weren't hitting. And just like the Celtics, you live by the three, you die by the three. And so that happened to us because when we talk about, if you look at the grand scheme of this game, right? EJ said in the chat, oh, I mean, you guys wasted the game. You didn't do anything until it got to the end, right? But in the fourth quarter, with just under 3 minutes to go, it's a 9-point game. You know what I mean? And that game was right there for the taking. So I don't think we're in trouble the way Steve is saying. I think we still have a shot at beating these guys. Do we have an answer for Jokic? Absolutely not. And I'm not going to pretend that we do. But, I think what they need to do is Spo needs to say, you know what? Fuck it. Jokic, we're going to guard this guy one-on-one. Stop double teaming him, leaving wide open shooters. Let him do whatever the fuck he does. And it's like nobody else can get off.
Pause.
But y'all don't have the horses to do that though.
I was gonna say, like, y'all could run against the Celtics because they're a half court defense team. Like, they play great half court D. But that pace that plays into Denver's into their game plan, right? They want to run, and they definitely want to run in Denver because of the altitude.
Right.
Jokic gets a rebound, and you got the biggest guy on the court setting the pace for their offense, running down the court. That's the difference. You can't have a Kyle Lowry who's just going to run as fast as he can down the court, and then the rest of the Heat are trailing, and then he makes a bad pass, and then y'all wonder why you're not shooting free throws. Like, if that's the case, just go to the hole. Try to get the fouls, and maybe they're not going to call it. It did look like they were letting them play a lot in that game. I think there was
On one
calls
side,
that
at least.
stop.
You saying stop? Like, look at the free throw attempts. What the fuck are you talking about?
Stop, Vari.
Look, Look, I'll tell you this, right? And this is total fan. This is not like no actual analysis or whatever. But as a Heat fan, sometimes it feels like the NBA has it out for us, right? And you can't tell any Heat fan about that 3-pointer Max Strus took last year, where they said there was some replay that the NBA called down from the replay center that his foot was on the line. They still haven't showed us that.
That's his Dez Bryant moment right there. We ain't never gonna hear that. That's the Dez is the catch moment. We'll never hear the end of that shit. Max Strus.
They still haven't showed us that, right? This season, and EJ brought it up in the game not game 7, in game 6, where Jimmy is going up for a shot in the third quarter. He gets fouled, and they say, "Oh, he was passing. There wasn't a shot." So out of bounds, take it out of bounds, and no free throws. You're talking about a game that came down to the final shot. So sometimes it feels like that they got it out for us, and then you get into game 1 of the finals, and it's like, okay, they're letting them play cool, and then you start looking at the stats, and you're like, man, these guys have shot 14 free throws, and Miami's only taking 2 free throws. Wow, they're shot 18 free throws. Miami's only taking 2. Wow, it's the end of the game. They shot 20 free throws. Miami only shot 2. What the fuck's going on?
The 2 free throws, like, and I said this before, I kind of think that is kind of crazy. Wait.
Real quick before you go ahead.
No, go ahead. You got
in a second.
Oh well, even for par for the course for the NBA, like just off of breathing, like sneezing, like I would have felt like they should at least have like 5 to 6 at the very least. 2 is kind of crazy to me. But again, y'all not like LeVar said, y'all not playing the Celtics, man. Y'all not playing bum ass Jaylen Brown and bum ass Jason Tatum. Y'all are playing some guys that are pissed off that they got shipped from elsewhere, or that no one drafted them because they had a back thing, or I tore up my knee and y'all must have forgot what I did in the bubble. Y'all are playing some motherfuckers that are actually talented, and they gonna show y'all. And Jimmy, and they telling you got Jimmy, but we got everybody else, and we ready.
I think it's what Chris said earlier is Jokic. I don't think you know what you have, and I think it's a little bit of what LeVar saying. You don't know what you have until you see this guy in person. they're probably sitting there watching like, this guy's not athletic, he can't jump, he's not going that fast. And then you get in front of him and he's making passes like he's magic. You know what I mean? Like, it's
Mhm.
crazy.
The other thing that I would say too, and I don't disagree with what you guys are saying, is that I lost my train of thought.
You got a blow dryer on?
No, I got a fan on
All
my
right,
fucking laptop.
but you're talking about you talk. All right, so here we go. You're talking about the free throws, right? The difference in free throws. You know how many fouls Miami had for the game?
Yeah, it was like I think it was like 14, something like
It was
that.
15.
15.
You know how many Denver had? 8. So you're talking about only a difference of 7 fouls in a game where you guys were not aggressive. Jimmy Butler wasn't going to the hole. You can't tell me, oh, it's the free throws. It's different. If they're not calling it the same way, then Miami would have had like 25, 30 fouls, and maybe Denver has 10. But you're talking about a
Okay,
difference of 7 fouls.
I got you. And
And
let me make
and some of those fouls came at the end of the game when you guys were out, and you know what I mean? Where you had to foul.
so let me make 2 points here. On my first point, and EJ, you may want to get the breaking news banner ready because I'm about to say something that's going to be profound here. Not sure if you're aware of this, Steve, but the Heat are not allowed to call fouls for themselves. Okay, there's like a third party involved here.
What's that mean? What's that mean?
The fucking refs, like, you know what that means. The second thing is, like, when you say call it the same way, you guys know I say that shit all the time in the chat. Like, I don't care if you call it ticky tack. I don't care if you let them play. Just call it the same way, both sides, right?
Shit didn't matter when y'all was playing the Knicks getting bullshit foul calls though.
in the earlier in the game, right? I think it was in the second quarter. Duncan Robinson went to the hole. He pushed off with his left hand, created a shot. Refs called offensive foul for him pushing off. 2 plays later, Jokic went to the hole. He pushed off and knocked Cody Zeller to the floor. Took a shot, made it. The refs let that shit roll.
Stop flopping.
2 plays after that,
and it's Cody Zeller versus the true MVP of the league, and you comparing him to Duncan Robinson, a guy who didn't start 80% of your league.
But here's the point, though. Here's the point, right? 2 plays after that, they ran the same play again. Jokic went to the hole on Cody Zeller. This time, pushed him off again, but Cody Zeller stood his ground to not try to get knocked down, and they called the foul on Cody Zeller. He went to push him off, and they called Zeller for the foul.
So you expected a charge? Huh? So basically, what you're saying is you want the refs to give y'all
the devil's advocate thing, but you got to be shitting me.
I mean, I've said this 1,000 times. The worst officiating in all of the big major pro sports in the country is the NBA. I don't know why you're surprised. I'm not surprised. I don't fully agree with you, but I understand what you mean because it is. I mean, when the Knicks were the favorites, we were getting some of the refs' favor, and then as the tide turns, oh, let me get right with Jimmy Butler here. Let me get right with the Heat. And I mean, we just got a dumbass coach that refused to challenge anything. But you know, it happens. It happens.
It's also going to seem that way when you're a fan, and your team is down 14, 15 points, and you don't realize that they're being a lot more aggressive on the defensive side, but they're not good defenders. So like Caleb Martin, he constantly leaves his assignment open. And then you wonder why there's fouls being called, because these guys catch the ball wide open at the 3-point line, and if they don't shoot, they're going to the hole. You guys are being D'd up at the 3-point line and then taking bad shots. Or if you're open, you're still just missing those shots. But at no point are you guys catching that wide open shot. Like you said, you guys are just missing shots. At what point, like Shaq said, if I go out there, and I know he's talking about Boston, but Boston started out 0 for 10 from 3 in Game 7 against you guys. Shaq said, at that point, I go into my huddle and I say, the next person to take a 3-pointer, I'm punching you in your face. Right? At what point does somebody on the Heat say, yo, we can't keep shooting jump shots because we're missing? Like,
and the reason
or not, you got to see it going. Yeah.
And the reason they keep doing that is because they're facing a bigger, stronger, more athletic team that's deterring these less talented guys from going to the cup, and that's the real problem. and that's why y'all was settling for jump shots. Again, I agree. 2 free throws, asinine. But again, when I look at the game, and you got these guys 0, 6 points, 13 points. You're not attacking the basket because these 6'8", 6'7" wings, they're not letting you. They're not Boston.
Right. And that's the thing. Like when you say not going to the hole, like we all watch the same game. You know, you got Jokic down there, you got Aaron Gordon down there. Like it's gonna be tough for these guys to attack the rim or whatever. So a lot of it was we had to take those jump shots. It's just that even in the last series against the Celtics, where we were able to get to the hole a little bit better, and part of that is just because one, you got Al Horford out there who is like 67 years old. So all you got to do is take him off the dribble, and you can just beat him off speed. And then you got Robert Williams out there, who is also, he's not necessarily slow, but he wears down fast. When I made the point to Steve, like, yo, why don't play him more? Like we seem to struggle when he's in the game. And Steve said it's his conditioning. You know, he's got the Joel Embiid problem. You know, he's not in shape, and so but in this series, it's not that. But the thing is that part of our game is those jump shots. It's just they're not falling. Like I said, while we didn't get to the rack as much as we want to, we wanted to take those shots that we took. We just weren't hitting them.
What's the key to the Heat winning tonight?
Jimmy Butler, he got to fucking show up. He can't, you can't be taking nights off. I don't know. He might have been tired. I heard people say he looked like he didn't have it from the beginning. I don't want to hear that shit. We're in the NBA. Let's get it done.
I know what it is. Jimmy Butler is Michael Jordan's son, but Jordan couldn't coach him on how to play. Never mind. Go ahead. Go ahead, EJ. You got it.
I heard there's this show that Tim Hardaway comes on, former Heat point guard Tim Hardaway. It's on the Fox FS1 show. And he was talking about the Denver thing. He was saying normally
Fox?
It's like an FS1, I think.
Fox, you say?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Listen,
but Tim Hardaway
Fox
was saying
News?
he was like the altitude thing is a real thing. He was like, but it doesn't.
And Tim Hardaway, who hates gays.
He was saying it doesn't affect you the whole game. He was like, it's usually like when you start the first quarter, you start the third. That's kind of like when you feel it, and after that, you kind of settle into it. Gotcha. So part of me wondered, like, for people who make the Jimmy was tired thing, which I don't buy it, but whatever, right? Maybe Jimmy's tired. They fly straight to Denver, and then you get into this altitude, and it kind of has a knock-on effect or whatever. So maybe now they've been there for like 5 days or however long it's been overall. Because they went straight to Denver when they left Boston. They didn't come back to Miami. So maybe, they got acclimated. I don't know, so I'm hoping to see a better performance. But I think Jimmy Butler's thing. Butler is the number one key. And then as a 1B or 1A, however you want to say it, or number 2, whatever the fuck, is Duncan Robinson, Caleb Martin. If Caleb Martin plays, they can't combine for 6 points.
I mean, to the altitude point, it is a real factor, but I think it really only I think it's sports. It depends on the sport, because when you're talking, I'm gonna tell you why.
I'm gonna tell you why, because I know
no,
where you're going.
I didn't
Nick
finish.
Wright
Let me tell you why.
He showed the stats.
Who the fuck is Nick
Wright? Across the board for the
Nick
Rockies.
Wright that never played anything.
Nick Wright?
Are you fucking serious?
No, EJ, what I'm saying.
Listen. You haven't let me finish. You haven't let me finish my point.
Nick Wright likes The Wire, so he's
the reality of the matter is, I say it matters in sports because if you're in the NFL and you're playing a 17-game season and Denver's on your schedule, you not the likelihood that you've played there in that year is not likely. You haven't played there at all that year. So in basketball, we do know that in 82 games, you have likely played at least once in another city, in Denver, at some point this year, right? So it's not like it's your first time feeling this altitude for this year. That's the difference, what I'm saying, versus with the NFL. You hear the altitude being a big factor for guys in that season because it's the first time that they felt it all year. Pause. That's partially difference for me.
So the point that I was making when I brought up the Nick Wright thing, it's not that he was talking about it. They brought up the stats that shows the win-loss of all the Denver sports teams for football, basketball, and baseball. And their home winning percentage is like insanely different when you look at the rest of the leagues in the rest of the teams in the NBA, the NFL, and in Major League Baseball. The only sport that is close in is baseball. And that's likely just because baseball isn't as physical as the other two sports, and your talent can pretty much overcome the altitude thing or whatever.
No,
But
it's because the
when
ball
you
flies. The ball flies better in that high altitude. Like
so the ball flies
Colorado
better,
is
but
known for home runs. Yeah,
but you
they're
got
known
better
for.
players too, though, right?
Yeah.
Whereas
Again,
no,
that stat by Nick Wright is a bullshit fucking stat because
it's just
it's
win
telling
losses. That's all it's
it's
showing.
telling you it's a bullshit fucking stat. It's numbers. Numbers don't lie, but they don't tell the truth. Just because Denver fucking doesn't have a great home percentage means nothing. The fucking
No, they have a
Rockies,
great home percentage. Is the point that he's making.
even still, the Rockies, they might just be the better fucking team. They play in a shitty ass division in the NL baseball league. They don't play anybody largely. You know what I mean? And the Broncos, shit, the Broncos, I mean, to my point,
Steve, did you
that
hear what I
my
said?
yeah, my point even about the Broncos, when you look at the Broncos and you talk about the NFL, it's that's even more why I'm saying what I'm saying. It's tougher to play a shitty ass Denver team in Denver because it's the one time per year we got to deal with this altitude. And that's just what it is. Like that's what I'm saying. Like in Miami, I get it. I don't know what your regular season was like with with Denver, but I'm saying I would imagine that in 82 games, y'all must have played in Denver at least once.
Yeah,
So
we
it's
played them
not
once.
like
We played them twice last year. One at home, one on the road.
right. So I mean, it's not like and I'm not knocking that. I'm saying it's not like the factor of knowing how it affects you is completely foreign to you in the same season. Whereas football, if this is your first time ever playing in Denver ever, which can happen for a team, right? If you're the Dolphins, you might not have the Broncos on your schedule every year. You might play them once in every 2 years. And if this is the first time you played them for the year, that altitude that day is gonna fuck you up because you haven't seen it all year and you haven't played them in 2 years.
Does Jimmy
Where
Butler have asthma?
Not that I know of, but I'm not sure if you like. I think EJ has this thing where his default setting is just to argue with me because we're essentially saying the same
Oh,
thing.
just you, huh?
I'm saying,
Just you.
nigga, if I said it first, how am I arguing your point?
I'm
If I said it
so
first, wait, how am
you
I arguing against you if I said it
because
first?
you said it first, and I said right. Nick Wright brought up this stat about their home. Nick Wright, he's full. Fuck that guy.
It is a full of shit. It
And
is
then
a
here
full of
we
shit
are.
point to me though. It's a full of shit point to me. Like,
All I was saying is Nick Wright brought up a stat that shows the win loss for Denver teams across baseball, basketball, and football at home, and the win
it's better.
percentage.
Yeah, I
Denver
get it.
team is
But that wasn't
significantly better.
that wasn't my argument. My argument was that I don't think it should be a big. I was actually agreeing with you and saying that Jimmy Butler is a professional and the altitude isn't something that
Should be
is
able to handle
completely
it.
foreign to them this year. See, you missed the whole fucking point.
EJ, what's the key to the Heat? What's the key to the Heat winning tonight?
Ah man, I mean they got to get aggressive. They have to attack the basket. They have to find a way. If their shots are not working, they have to find a way to attack the basket. Point blank. Period. Offensive or defensively, they're gonna have to hope that everyone surrounding Jokic has a bad game. That's
My
virtually it.
Yeah, I think the key is for the video analyst on the Heat that they call a coach to have watched some video and drawn up some plays for these guys because um you guys are coming down and you don't have the size, so you have to have plays drawn to get these guys open. It can't just be the screen and roll. It can't just be the pick and pops. Like those are plays, right? But now that's going to be defended. So Spoelstra is going to have to come out and he's going to have to be a coach and he's going to have to be able to will these guys or show these guys what it takes to win against a team that they're outmanned against. And this is something that he hasn't seen often. We talked about in the chat and I said since 2020 I've considered him a pretty good coach because that's when he's had teams that weren't super teams, right? Before that he had super teams. Since then he's had teams where he's had to, fight some uphill battles. I think
What
this
the
is
fuck are
the
you talking about? Super teams. The LeBron era. Spoelstra's been the coach since 2008. The LeBron era. That's 13 years. The LeBron era was 4 years.
what do you do before that?
Before that,
Yeah.
you mean LeBron?
No, Spolstra.
That's what I'm saying. You mean what he did before LeBron era?
Yeah.
Made the playoffs, got out of the
Stop.
first round.
Stop it.
He's
Stop it. Okay.
so being a good coach is only winning championships.
He's got an uphill battle right now. And this is probably the biggest uphill battle that he's faced in his career. For teams when you're talking about being outmanned. They have a center, they have the best player arguably in the league right now. The actual MVP on the other side, and you don't have the size for it. They have Jamal Murray, who's looking like a top 15 to 20 guy in the league right now. So much so that EJ said he would consider him top 10.
No.
Okay. Whether he is or he isn't, he's playing that way. Maybe right now, right?
In the playoffs.
In the playoffs.
In the playoffs,
yeah.
He's
argument.
And then you got guys that are just starting or deciding it's time to show up, right? The Bruce, what's his name? Dude that comes off the bench for them, really defensive guy. KCP is showing up. Like you got guys that are showing up for you. Aaron Gordon is showing up.
Bruce Brown.
Yeah.
I said Bruce Brown. Am I still?
So no.
We couldn't hear you. I really couldn't.
Oh, okay.
No, I didn't hear you. But yeah, so this is where Spoelstra's got to come out. He's got to coach. He's got to use his bench too. Like I get it, Kevin Love is old, but he's got size, and you need another big man. Throw him in there and say foul. Get in there and foul Jokic. Kevin Garnett said the same thing. I was watching a video from Kevin Garnett where he said, "Hey, when he comes down, hit him with an elbow, foul him, take the foul."
I agree with your Kevin Love point, and I agree with Spo's decision to not play Kevin Love in Game 6 and Game 7, only because the problem for the Heat is that they don't have a lot of two-way players, right? You got Jimmy, who's a two-way player. Bam is a two-way player, but disappears on offense, right? Mm. And like that's kind of it. You have other guys who they're either all offense or all defense. Mm-hmm. And for Kevin Love, he's all defense. You know what I mean? And so that's why they didn't play him in Game 6 and Game 7 of the finals. And I think they went into Game 1 with that same mentality that these guys have so much to the point that you were just making, Steve, Jokic, Murray, Brown, KCP, Aaron Gordon. All these guys are doing all of this shit or whatever. And so it was like, we can't have somebody in there that can't score, And so I think that was the whole point of not playing Love. But I think you got to get him in there. The other thing I would say, too, and this is going to be a coaching thing where you should see it. You should be able to see it in the video when they break down this game, the coaches, because I saw it live. I kept commenting on the shit here in the house is whatever Denver was doing, they kept getting switches where Gabe Vincent kept ending up on Aaron Gordon down in the paint. And I mean, that shit was, that was easy. You know what I mean? And I'm like, yo, they need to stop. I don't know what the fuck is happening here, but they got to figure out a way to stop that when they're running their screens, to stop letting Gabe Vincent get switched on to Aaron Gordon, because that shit is the ultimate mismatch. And he's either going to have to foul him and get in foul trouble and have to be out of the game, can't get in rhythm, etc., or you're just giving up easy buckets. So they got to figure out a way to try to combat that or whatever. But we'll see what happens tonight, man.
They got to fight through it. Jimmy Butler has to get to the paint. He's got to pump fake. He's got to get those 10 free throws he's been averaging on the year. If he doesn't get that, and not just on the stance of VP thinks they should call fouls, but on the stance of him going in and actually earning these fouls, then you guys are toast tonight.
I mean, he went to the paint sometimes. He ended up on the ground, no foul call. But but the refs will say, "Oh, he was flopping." He threw himself on the ground. And then even he started doing that shit that you see. When you watching the game, you hear a player go to the hole, you hear him go, "Hey," like trying to let the ref know I was fouled. The ref's like, "Nah, dog. Like, come on, man, play ball. Get out of here." Oh shit! He looked at Jokic. Foul.
I've had enough of this nonsense, man. Can we talk about Boston?
Boston who? Oh, the Celtics. Oh, I didn't even know that they even existed anymore. Yeah, let's
That's
talk
pretty
about
Jalen Brown.
Boston.
Yep.
Yo,
What is it?
they gotta blow it. They gotta let them listen. If I don't listen, man.
Have they peaked?
Yeah.
Listen, Jason. We've given Jason Tatum a lot of smoke. Jalen Brown, and I've said it, and I think I was one of the only ones that said it. He's just as bad, if not worse.
Yo, I
He's just
think
as bad.
I got a hot take. I think Jason Tatum didn't really hurt his ankle.
I don't
I think
absolutely,
I think
absolutely not.
I
He
think he
out of
did
nowhere
that
he
for that.
shows up hurt.
I think he did that on that first play to make it seem like, well, fuck it. If we lose, now
I
I got
wasn't
an
healthy.
excuse.
Yo, these dudes, they do not have any dog in them. That is the
You know,
problem. And Jalen Brown, when you look back now, everybody's talking about it. Hey, Spo, make him go left. This dude has 7 to 8 straight turnovers, like or just 7 to 8 turnovers
Yeah,
overall
eight total.
because he
Eight
can't go
overall,
total.
left.
8.
Because he can't go left. Like you're an NBA player and you can't go left, and you're a guard. Like
Well,
these
turn your back to the basket. Like that's what Chauncey Billups used to do. There was a point when he couldn't go left, and when they tried to force him left, he turned his back to the basket and figured something out. Because now left is
fundamental
right.
basketball,
Like
fundamental basketball,
But
fundamental basketball.
I got a hot take too, Steve. I think Jalen Brown actually wants out of Boston so he can go be the guy somewhere else. But then the problem is he made the All NBA team, and the difference
now
in
he
that
want that super
supermax
max.
money is $100 million.
Yeah.
Boston can offer him $100 million more than any other team, and now he's kind of like stuck there.
Even if he goes somewhere else, though, he's gonna be exposed because these two guys are not that good. I mean, Jalen Brown, he was highly recruited coming out, and then decided to play in California. And you got to wonder why he ran away from the big programs. We look at these other guys, Jamal Murray's, who
I
else?
mean, he's a smart guy though.
Even yeah, but that ain't got nothing to do with basketball. You could be smart and go to a great basketball university. We're not talking about him and his pursuit of his education. What I'm saying is this dude ran from the top programs because he knew he wasn't that talented. You see a dude like Jamal Murray, even though he blew up his knee last year, that dude plays like he played at Kentucky. Just look at the Kentucky rosters.
Mm.
These guys put out NBA pros. They haven't won in a little while, but they got guys that know as a one-on-one player, you can't fuck with me. Look at Sacramento, how them dudes was doing. Kentucky guy. I mean,
Yeah,
Jalen Brown, he ain't it. He's just not it.
Kentucky is the Bama of college basketball.
Basketball. And Jason Tatum comes from where? One of the most overrated pro ready programs in the nation. Duke.
Mm.
They Duke is a great college program, but translating it to professional, probably the only the to me probably the best Duke NBA pro is Grant Hill, and his career was cut short due to injury.
'Cause of
Other than
injury.
I
that,
would say the Duke players. I would say Duke players are more like Spurs guys. They come out like fundamentally sound. Like the fundamentals all there, but they don't make stars.
Duke is the hype of the nation. Duke is what white middle America, even though it's not even the middle of America, but it's what the conservatives of basketball still want the game to be. These
Yeah.
clean cut guys that came under Krzyzewski, they don't fight, they don't do this. Even when you had dirty ass Leitner, nobody was mad, nobody batting an eye. Like Duke
They
is
sent
what
him to the Olympics.
exactly. Duke is what America wants basketball to look like. And so when you look at these Duke guys, and sorry, Kyrie, let's give Kyrie his flowers, even though it was whatever it was at Duke. Kyrie and Grant Hill are probably the two best
Kyrie went to
people.
Duke.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And so you
I
don't even
didn't
remember
realize
that.
JJ
that.
Redick.
I
JJ,
know
even
JJ Redick. I didn't know Kyrie
even
went to Duke.
JJ Redick wasn't a world beater in basketball. I mean,
No.
again, when you
I
look
think he
at Duke,
overperformed though in the NBA.
he's
No,
had
I
his
think JJ
moments.
did his thing, but
He had his
but
moments
he's
on the back half of his
right.
career as a
You
spot
weren't
up
going to build a
shooter, and
team around him the way it
nah,
looked
he,
like when he was
Oh
when
well,
he was
no,
like the
no,
top
no.
yeah,
guy out of Duke.
he ain't no guy you gonna pick first or second or third or maybe even fourth, depending on your roster. Duke, when you talking about translating to a professional basketball program, to a professional basketball team, outside of Kyrie and Grant Hill, have not produced that. And that's just what it is. So I'm saying, and I believe that Jason Tatum has been largely overrated the whole time. People been talking about Kobe Mamba mentality, all this bullshit. But when it's
Well,
time to win Game 7 at home, what does this dude do?
I think we've talked about it though through year after year, pod after pod, right? It's the mentality, and you said it. They don't have the dog. They're not. They're soft. They don't have the mama mentality, right? They're looking for the foul. Jason Tatum is always looking for the foul. Like if you watch that series against the Heat, actually, if you watch the playoffs all this year, Jason Tatum is always looking for the foul. Offense, defense, he's worse than LeBron. And I think as we go into year after year, and these new players hit the league, they're getting softer and softer. And I think that's the key to Jason Tatum. If he just gets out there and plays ball, like he could be a great player, and I think he could probably have brought that team to winning a championship. But you can't depend on the refs to be the difference maker when it gets to this level. Like in the regular season, sure, you're going to get those calls. The league, the NBA is saying, hey, this is one of our marquee guys. Let's make sure he looks great. So the refs are going to make those calls. They're going to give you those calls. But when we're talking about the playoffs and even the finals last year, you're not going to get those calls. You got to go out there and you got to win the game.
I mean, you
And
know, I would
you
say to
no, go ahead,
oh,
VP.
I would first say to both of you guys, in my John McClane voice, welcome to the party, pal. You know, I've been telling you guys that Tatum is not a star. The guy is
He's a
so fucking.
star.
I see, and I never disagree with you. I just know your definition is different from what we're saying. And I was just gonna say what Steve just said was key. The NBA has boosted this guy to be a star because he's clean cut. He comes from Duke. He's light skinned. They want to market this guy to be the likable star. Does he play to that level, deserving of that acclimate that that recognition? Probably not. And I think that's your point, VP, that he's getting this star status level max guy treatment when he's really not that guy. And I think the
Right.
NBA elevated this kid. He's not that
Like
good.
Jason Tatum got 4 MVP. He finished fourth in MVP voting this year. Are you fucking serious?
What did
He's
he
not that
average?
good.
What did he average?
I would have to look it up real quick, but he's not that good, bro. Like
I
MVPs
think
don't
he
take
averaged.
multiple
I
games
think he
off.
averaged like 27 and 9 or something like that. You can't say he's not that good. Maybe he's not playoff ready. Maybe he's the Peyton Manning of of the NBA, where he's great until playoff time starts, and then it just doesn't work out. Even though Peyton Manning finally found a way to get it done twice. Um, you know, I don't know.
30.1 points,
He
I
averaged
think.
30.1,
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, you
38,
can't tell me.
38 and 4.
So you can't tell me a guy that averaged 30 and 8 can't get with another perceived star on his team, um, and a rookie coach can't get an
His field
MVP
goal
vote.
percentage was 73rd in the league, though, 46.6%. So he's a volume shooter. He shoots a
Jason
lot and
Tatum,
hopes they go
he's
down.
overrated. He right. Jason Tatum showed you people's these guys are the elimination game. He went and put up 50. Nobody had put up 50 in a game 7 since Steph. Oh my God, these made up bullshit stats. And then what happens? He goes to the next game and lose to the 8 seed on his home floor. What happens after that? He goes and lose game 2 on his home floor. What happens after that? He goes and lose game 3 on the road. Get the fuck out of here. This guy, he's overrated, yo. He's so overrated. This guy is like a fucking white dwarf. If you want to call him a star, since he's light skinned, Steve, I'll go there.
He's a star, man. He may not be a superstar like people are making it seem. He may not even be deserving of a max contract, if you will, but he is a star. And if you think about, Devin Booker is in a similar boat, right? Book comes out, puts up 40, 40, 40, 40, 40, 50, 40, and then in the huge game, they lose to the Lakers, right? Like, it's just, these guys are not built that way, yo. They're not built. They're not. It's mental health over everything. And don't get me wrong, I think mental health is important, but they're so worried about I can't be judged. I can't take the risk. That they're just not out there doing it, man. And it all started, this is gonna sound bad, but it started with LeBron. I don't watch the news during the playoffs because it hurts my feelings. Get the fuck out of here, nigga. You got to deal with it. You deal with it. Turn on TV and let people tell you that you a bum.
I don't agree with that. Like whatever you got to do to keep yourself
LeBron's
in
the
the.
top. Don't get me wrong. LeBron
I
is a
think
top 5 player all time.
I think part of the
One of
problem
the
with the top
greatest.
five. Come on now, that's don't slap the man in the face.
Hmm?
What you mean? What do you mean?
At best, LeBron is a top two player.
Top
Get the
three?
At
all right,
worst,
all right. Nope, nope, nope,
worst
nope,
at
nope,
worst, he's a top three player.
nope, nope, nope. Top five. Top five is where he stands and where he needs to stand. Top five.
Where
Top
can
five.
Jalen Brown go and be make an immediate impact?
No, let me say one more thing real quick on
Go
this
ahead, go ahead.
situation. What I think part of the problem is, right? Part of the problem is that for these guys, they're too wrapped up in the media, social media component of the game. And I don't mean it the way that you're talking about what you just said. What I'm talking about, I got CJ giving me the look. What I'm talking about here is these guys worried about, yo, how I'm gonna look on the camera when I get to the arena, what my fit gonna look like, what am I gonna be trending on social media for this certain thing that I wear, and all this kind of shit. Except they're not worried about the game,
I
right?
showed up looking like a peacock. Look at that.
Right. You know what I mean? Like, what how can I get the most attention, and instead of focusing on the game, you know what I mean? And I get it. LeBron does that shit sometimes too, where he shows up in a suit or whatever. But I mean, it's just a suit, right? You look at guys like Westbrook, Harden, uh,
Kuzma.
Jason Tatum. These guys showing up in these crazy ass outfits and shit. Like, why? You know how Kobe used to show up to the arena in a pair of jeans and a shirt.
Yeah.
You know how Tim Duncan showed up to the arena looking like a fucking bum. You know
Tim
what I mean?
Duncan showed up to everywhere looking like. I think he was
Right.
born looking like
You
a
know what
bum.
those guys did when they got on the floor? They put in work because they weren't at home like, ooh. Like, you know how when you was a kid, when you was getting ready, you go to ninth grade, you got your shit laid out on the bed. You're like, I'm about to be hurting these niggas. Oh, man.
I
That's
go
how,
a step
that's
further.
how Jason Tatum
I
goes
go
to
a
the
step
game.
further. It ain't even the fashion and the internet. It's the AAU factor. All
What
of
about
these
D Wade
dudes,
though?
You do bring it up a
all of
lot. You
these,
do bring it up a
all of
lot.
these dudes are friends. That's the problem. They've been balling with each other, playing since they were teenagers, and they have no competitive spirit. The whole thing is like you can get money, ball out, do what you got to do, but you have to for 48 minutes see the other guy as your enemy.
As an
And the,
enemy.
and the guys that do that, they're the ones that stand out. Jalen Brunson, he puts his head down. He don't give a fuck, but he's going to kill your team. Jimmy Butler, he wants to kill your team. Jokic, I'm from Serbia, dog. I don't give a fuck about none of that shit you talking about. I'm gonna kill your team. That's the mentality of the great ones.
Bam said the same thing. Did Bam go to Duke?
No, Bam went to Kentucky.
He went to Kentucky. Okay,
Him
because
and Tyler Hero both went to Kentucky.
I'm trying to remember who it was that Bam was talking about. That he was like, when I see him on the court, I don't say shit to him. I thought it was somebody on Boston, but whatever. Nonetheless, um, yeah, EJ, you're right. You're right. These guys they're friends. They want to be friends because you listen to the Ron Artest of the world, you listen to Steven Jackson, you listen to those guys talk about they all knew each other from back in the day. All the dudes that came from the Northeast, they all played just the same since the young camps and stuff like that. So they knew each other, but when they got on the court, it was fuck you. Like if we fight, we fight. And now it's they want to be friends. They're laughing at halftime. I'm down 20 to you. I'm not laughing with you at halftime. You know what I'm saying? And I know we kill LeBron for walking off and not shaking people's hands and shit like that. I'm good with that. When the series over, that's where I judge him. But when he does that game 1, 2, 3, 4, before the series is over, he walks off. He don't say shit. He don't do the good to see you type shit. I commend him for that. It's at the end that I give him a hard time. Like you still need to go over and be like, yo, good game, good series, good luck, some
and
shit.
and even during the game, the chatter, look at seemingly making dinner plans before you play, like it's just what I mean. Like somebody like Magic and Bird and even Mike, all of these guys, they had great relationships, man. But they knew when it was game time, that's just what you do, and that's the sport, that's the competitive nature of the sport. And these guys are just too goddamn friendly. And I think part of it is, the AAU symptoms. Just, they just don't have that dog in them.
Yeah. Who you guys got tonight in game 2?
I say Denver by
Without your
5.
fan heart.
I say Denver. It's going to be a closer. It should be a closer game. I think Denver still wins by single digits.
VP, you got Miami. All right. I got Denver by 8. I think Denver gets away by 8. I think Miami closes the gap at the end of the game, but then they blunder, and something stupid happens, unfortunately. But I don't think that if Miami loses, that they're out of the series. I do think they're in trouble. I just don't think they're out of the series because I think Denver is just protecting home court. But
I'd say watch for Duncan Robinson tonight. He might be a Duncan Robinson revenge game.
they're gonna need it.
He missed some wide open shots, and he don't normally do that.
Struz too. You need those guys to hit. It's a Sunday night game. Succession has ended, so you won't be missing that. How was that finale, VP?
It was awesome, man. I
Yeah.
loved it. Some people didn't like it. Some, Eric sent to EJ the bat signal. EJ HBO, but I loved it. I thought it was great. They did an hour and a half finale. They kind of showed how everybody's story ended, so you don't have to worry about,
What happened?
montage or 20-minute montage at the end of 4 seasons to kind of put everybody in place. They spent a season doing it, so I loved it, and I hope that more series do this when they get to the end of their run, where whatever is supposed to happen, you watch it happen over the season, and you don't have to worry like what about,
and make your own fucking story.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, they even did like little stuff that I watched a video on YouTube about, like some of the stuff they did, like that was like callbacks to season 1 of stuff that they like wrapped up in that finale episode. Man, like I thought it was good. I love that show. That was one of the best. One of the best. That shit is up there. Like, and in my opinion, with some of the great TV series that we've had in this country.
What's
on
the
list?
What's the next big thing for Sunday nights? I mean, I guess it's summertime, so we probably won't get much of shit. But
HBO news show that's getting ready to come out, some show called Idol, supposed to be like about some kind of singer, like a pop star kind of thing. That's going to be their new whatever their 9 o'clock show is on Sunday. It's supposed to be like the show, So
okay.
That's their next show. It's supposed to get ready to start, and then I don't know what comes back in like September or whatever. So
not shit because they still on strike.
Yeah, the writers. Yeah.
What else you been watching, VP?
Man, one, I started the Mandalorian on Disney Plus. I know it's like in season 3, but I hadn't watched it yet. So I started that, and then I was planning on also starting that show y'all told me about on FX. I just couldn't remember the name of it.
Snowfall.
There you go. So I'm planning on starting that too. So I've watched about 6 episodes of The Mandalorian. Thought it was pretty good. And then I was planning on starting that Snowfall show as well. The other thing I watched, that movie, I don't know if y'all seen it, with Tom Hanks, A Man Called Otto.
I heard it was rough.
I want to watch it.
And
I want to watch it.
Tom Hanks, the man is just a goddamn national treasure. Like
he is. I fuck with Tom Hanks. Tom Hanks is the white Denzel to me.
Yeah. I literally told my wife that last night. I was like, I saw the previews. I had already wanted to see the movie, but even without having seen the previews, I would have saw it anyway because it's Tom Hanks, Denzel, Pixar. Like, they usually don't miss. You know what I mean? So I can, I don't gotta see a preview. You tell me I got Tom Hanks, I'll watch it. You know what I mean? And it was a great movie, man. Great movie. The one thing I will say is they actually do give you a trigger warning before the movie starts. The show deals with suicide. Tom Hanks' character
I
lost
did
his
see
wife.
that.
Yeah, he lost his wife, and he's thinking about taking his life. And so the movie is kind of about that.
That nigga wildin'.
Yeah, but one
Steve,
other shout out.
that nigga wildin'. Lost his wife, thinking about taking his life. That nigga wild.
Yeah.
But one other thing I liked about the movie, the female character. The female character.
How much is the life insurance?
the late the his co-star, the lady, her name is Marisol.
Mhm.
Man, their chemistry on screen was so good, yo. Like I was
Really?
like, yo, I'm like, what? I've never seen her in anything, so I googled her, and like she's like a star like in Mexico. Like she's been in some stuff. Like I don't know if she's like a big deal in Mexico, but she's
Mhm.
been in some stuff like over this movie kind of is like her big break kind of thing. And I was like, yeah, I hope that this leads to some stuff for her because I felt like she killed it with Tom Hanks.
Mariana Trevino.
Yeah, Mariana Trevino. Like I loved her in this movie. I'd never seen her before, and I thought she played great with Tom Hanks.
Wait a minute. Hold up.
No,
This broad?
no, it's not her. You haven't seen her in anything.
Mariano, hold on. If
You haven't seen
she's
her.
in what I think she's in,
You haven't. It's not her.
I'm about to say, I've seen her.
I don't know who you're talking about, but I'm like I looked her up, and like all her shit is like Mexican shit.
Like, but did you check
She has a
OnlyFans?
Netflix show, but it's like a Spanish Netflix show, and I know you don't speak Spanish. So I'm pretty sure you didn't watch it.
I can understand enough.
EJ does speak Spanish though.
I
See.
can understand enough, actually.
Okay.
Nah, I haven't
Oh,
seen. She looks like the chick from Chicago PD though. She looks like an
Oh,
yeah.
older version of her.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, she ain't in shit. I'm looking at IMDb.
Right.
Damn, everything's Spanish. Club
They said she
Cuervos.
was in a play, some kind of play that went big in Mexico that she was in for like 2 years. That was like her big break, and then this movie. So, but I hope she gets some roles, man, because she killed that role. Their screen chemistry, the acting, it was really good. Her playing alongside Tom Hanks. So I hope that this shit is like a good break for her. But I love that movie, man. It was really good. Tom Hanks killed it, of course. Mariana Trevino killed it. The story was good, and I thought it was going to be one of those things like he lost his wife and then like she's like the new love interest, but it wasn't that. It's like she moves to the neighborhood. He's this grumpy old man, and then like they befriend each other. And she kind of becomes like a daughter to him, basically.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm. I started it the other night and I saw that trigger warning. That didn't stop me from watching it. I just wanted to mention that I saw it. But I did. I just didn't I didn't want to fall asleep on it. Like there's some stuff that I'm like I know as soon as I put the recliner up, it's night, so I won't start it. And that was one of them. I started and then I just switched off to something else.
Yeah,
You been watching anything else?
I think you will feel some camaraderie with the Tom Hanks character, Steve. Like the movie starts off, he goes to like Home Depot or some shit to go buy the rope to delete himself, and he gets to the counter and the dude charges him like whatever the price for the rope.
Oh, I did see that. I saw the clip of that. So,
Yeah, he's like, hey, wait a minute. He's like, the thing said that the rope should cost this much, and the guy was like, oh, it's $198 a yard. And he's like, I only got 5 feet. I didn't get 6 feet or whatever. He was like, yeah, but we can't ring it up less than a yard. He's like, it's $133 a foot. So that means I got 5 feet. The price should be boo, 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 boo. And the person behind him is like, sir, I can give you 33 cents. He's like, I don't need 33 cents. It's the principle.
that don't sound like me. That sound like somebody else.
This dude is making an argument about 33 cents for some rope he's about to use to go off of stuff.
Right. Yo. You know what? You got to make sure the world is right before you leave it.
That's funny as shit.
Yeah, but it's a good movie. Hilarious. I love it. Like I said, man, Tom Hanks, the man's a goddamn national treasure.
Yeah, I like him a lot, man. What about you, EJ? You been watching anything? I know you went to see Spider-Man, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I saw it. I think it's gonna be. I think people gonna love it. It's gonna be a very enjoyable film. For me, it didn't really move me so much. I mean, it was very slow in some parts, so that might be why. Because I kind of faded. On my old man shit. But I mean, it was cool. I'd have to watch it again to know if I feel like it's better than the first one. But it's visuals. I mean, people gonna enjoy it. I can't really see anyone saying that they don't like that film. It just didn't. If any time that I'm being Al Bundy on this one, it's this one because it just didn't do a whole lot for me. But I don't say it was bad, but I didn't leave feeling like I saw the greatest thing in the world, like some people are saying. But
yeah, I think this one's gonna have to do a lot for me, only because and you know more about the comics and shit like that. But for me, what I liked about the first one was like the way they filmed it, how it looked like a comic book versus like a regular like
You
animated
gonna get
film.
that. You gonna get
Yeah,
that
they
a
did that again.
thousand percent.
No,
Yeah,
I,
you
I
gonna get
know,
a
but I'm saying
thousand
like so
percent.
like that was like the first time I had seen that, so
I didn't
it was
like
like,
that.
oh, something new. Plus, I thought
Mm.
the story was great. I thought the voice actor who did Miles, I thought he was great.
Shamik Moore,
So
he's dope.
you know what I mean? So it was so much shit that went into it. I was like, yo, this is a phenomenal fucking film. So I feel like the part two is gonna have to like step it up for me to be like, yo, this shit was good.
Nah, I think you're gonna get all of that. I mean, because Shamik Moore is the guy who does Miles, and he also played the RZA on no, not the RZA. I'm sorry, Raekwon on Wu Tang Saga,
Oh, is that who
and
that is?
yeah,
Damn, I didn't know
he's
that.
yeah, he's a phenomenal actor. The kid, he started his career in the movie Dope. He's a
I remember that.
phenomenal actor.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
he's one of the ones, man. He's one of the next ones. Doesn't get enough praise, but I think you're gonna get all of that, VP. I kind of find it hard for you to not like it. For me, it just didn't. I don't know what it was. I left out of there feeling kind of confused, to be honest. Yeah, I kind of felt confused and I fell asleep a little bit. It just it was cool. It's a solid film. I'm not bouncing off the walls to go see it again. But Yellow Jackets series finished, and I'm done with that shit. I mean, I've watched it off pure obligation to finishing it, but it's I mean people, and it goes to show you what people in America like. The female aspect of it, the women's empowerment aspect of it, and then there's just a lot of quirky and wild shit that goes on with it. Like you don't know if it's operating in the supernatural at one point. You don't know what the fuck is going on, and they never explain it. So the fact that this show has so much steam that they're saying a third season is coming back really tells me there's something fucking wrong with American people. Because it's about cannibalism. I mean, just all type of stupid shit going on that has you every episode saying like, "What the fuck just happened?" So I don't know that I'll be watching that again.
Yo, you
Um,
sound like me, yo. When remember that show Leftovers on HBO?
I
I
never
Mhm.
watched
watched
that
that
one.
shit. Man, you guys know I say all the time. I give every show 3 episodes. You don't got me by episode 3, I'm out. And
Right?
I watched episode 1. I'm like, what the fuck?
Yeah, I
And then I
remember
saw
that.
episode 2, and I was like, I can't do this shit. I couldn't even get to 3. And
Yeah,
then I see it got renewed. It's like winning awards. I'm seeing on social media, oh my god, you see Leftovers? And I'm like,
yeah.
these people talk
It's
that shit.
people like suspense.
They just, I don't know. It's weird. But that the Mayans just came back on. It's season 5. I don't like it at all. The other thing that's coming back
Damn,
on
mine's
Jack,
is on 5.
yeah, season 5.
Man, I feel like this show just
Uh,
started.
you're right. Jack Ryan is coming back to Amazon. I can't wait for that. That'll be the final season in June. There was something else
Okay,
that I was watching. I've been
I'm gonna
watching
wait on that then.
Citadel.
I
Yeah, I've been
stopped.
watching Citadel.
Akira Bison stopped.
Yeah, I stopped too. I'm not really going back to it. There was something else that I was looking at. I can't remember what it was. I saw the movie Missing on Netflix with Nia Long is in it. It was a pretty good twist at the end. I wouldn't write home about it per se. But that's virtually it. I'm missing something. I can't think of it. I'm missing something. I don't know what
Guardians.
it is. Guardians, I saw that finally. I thought that was masterfully done. I actually really enjoyed that. James Gunn, I think that's his final Marvel installment because now he's pretty much running what DC is going to be doing. Um,
Mm.
but yeah, I thought the Guardians flick was pretty damn good. It had me from beginning to end. It was comedic. It was good. I loved it. I loved it.
They did a good job. I just hated that there was so little Rocket because you know what I mean? Like, because the way what they were doing in this one.
Right,
Like,
right.
I wanted more Bradley Cooper.
Yeah, yeah. I think it was dope. It was
Bradley
a
Cooper
great
voicing
pace.
Rocket.
Hmm.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yep. Yep. I
Damn.
think it was a great pace though. It was a great pace of film.
Yeah, I loved it. I loved the movie. I thought they did a good job. I saw Spider Man yesterday. Actually, I saw an hour and a half of it. I didn't get to see the last 40 minutes because not because I'm old and fell asleep, but because we had to leave. Um, and I don't know, yo. I don't like that comic book look that you're talking about. I don't like it. I'd rather it just be a damn cartoon. Just make this shit a cartoon. And it just it didn't do it for me.
I'm surprised that you say that.
I thought it was I like the acting, and like I said, when the 2099 showed up, that was nostalgic for me because it brought me back to actually reading comic books in the 2099 when that series first kind of popped up.
Mhm.
You know, so that was pretty cool. But other than that, it didn't really it wasn't it for me. I thought it was cool hearing Issa Rae um pop up out of nowhere.
Yeah, I
Um,
knew she
you
was
know
gonna
when
play
you
the character.
yeah, when you watch these animated films, and you hear of a voice that you haven't heard, and you're like, "Oh shit, that's so and so." Like
Mhm.
that's always pretty dope.
I felt like it was telenovela-ish. I felt like it was soap opera-ish. Like the theme, the constant theme is just like, okay, they're mad at Miles, and okay, we're back at this again, and
Hmm.
okay, I kind of got lost in that shit, and it was kind of like, I don't know. At some point, it bored me.
It was a little confusing. Like, why am I in the principal's office if I'm a top tier student? Like shit like that. Like
Mhm.
I get it, man. But I tell you one thing. I saw there's a lot of stands. Like there's a lot of Spider-Man stands out there, and there always have been. But like even more so, like yesterday when we were in line, motherfuckers was dressed up in Spider-Man costumes and
Mhm.
stuff. Like he's getting big paws, and it was good, man. A lot of the younger kids really love it, and so hopefully they'll have something to follow for years to come with that. I've been watching Snowfall, and they're doing a great job. They did a great job. I can't say they're doing. They did. I wish I had watched it live, but it's good because I'll be able to catch up pretty quickly. So VP, when you get on that, I think you'll appreciate it. You'll probably be like, "Oh, I watched it 4 times already," like you did with The Wire.
Mm.
For some reason, you never want to watch hood shit until it's like forced upon you, and then you love it. Um, that's really it, man. And then of course the guilty pleasures, the Too Hot to Handles on web on Netflix, which by the way, Netflix booted out people not in your household recently. If you haven't heard about that,
Yeah,
Oh,
Pete. That.
so hey, one thing I wanted to talk about. Other than that, I haven't watched much of anything else. But real quick, I recall. I don't remember who it was, so it's gonna sound like I'm saying it was me, but no, I remember someone from this pod saying that Shannon Sharp was leaving after him and Skip after he stepped
I think
away,
we all said that. I think we
and
all said he had to leave.
it's come to fruition at this point. Where do you guys think he lands? You think he goes his own show or like
no.
what? Nah.
He's
I
got
think
Club
it's
Shay Shay.
yeah.
Probably finds a home at ESPN or
I was
NFL
about
Net.
to say I think
I
he ends
don't
up on
know.
first take.
You think
Yeah,
he's gonna go to First Take?
Yeah,
it's possible.
they need another they need
Athlete.
They're
somebody
not.
to go at Stephen A.
They're
Yeah,
not gonna do
yeah.
it.
So
I don't think
and
they'll do
I
that.
I
That's
I think
can't
the
too.
show
see
was
him
at
as
its best
Stephen
when
A.
Stephen A. has somebody to argue with, like that's kind of like on his level, where
Yeah,
like when it was him and Stephen A. and Skip, or Stephen A. and
because
who was the other
it's
guy?
boring now. First take
Yeah,
is boring as shit now.
It is, but I think it becomes too urban for ESPN if you put him there. Now you got Stephen A. who wants to be a thug, and now you have Shannon
Stephen
Sharp,
A. don't want to be no thug.
not a thug, but he always I
He
talk to
wants
my
to be black.
homies.
He
Yeah,
want he.
yeah,
I
yeah,
mean, not
yeah,
wants to
yeah.
be black, but he's his Negro self as much as possible. Basically,
He won't be a thug.
stop it.
You know, for
That
him to
man
come out and be like,
clean.
I'm talking to people close to John Moran to say they don't even think he's gonna be alive and fight. Shut the fuck
yeah.
up, Stephen A.
I
Stop.
think Stephen
He be
Stephen
ODing.
Yeah, I think he started off with, he got to where he
You
is
gotta watch the
because,
Bloods and Crips.
he
I've
was
been
he was
around them in
eloquent.
Philly. Get the fuck
He's
out of
he's
here,
an
Stephen
eloquent
A.
guy, and then he also can get loud and stuff like, so he's like a character, and I feel like he's leaned like way too hard into that character to where, he goes on the way Steve's talking about or whatever.
He
But at the end of the day, he's their highest paid star. So I get, I guess
But I
he's doing
think
it right.
it's
It's
too
working.
much. I
He's
think for
been
I
that
agree.
way.
It's too
ESPN,
much.
He's
yeah,
Stephen A is who he is, though. I mean, I could honestly say, if you look back on who he's consistently been this guy throughout his whole career, and he speaks to it, on how he's had to get the way he's had to get it, and I get it. I
Right.
mean, I,
But
I don't know
the
that
problem
Shannon
comes
balances
the
that out
problem
though.
comes, EJ.
right.
The problem comes with Stephen A. is that, like, when you go back to the Knicks Heat series, right? ESPN's entire coverage of the Knicks series was how Stephen A. felt about it. And it's like, yo, I don't watch my sports journalism to find out how one man feels about a series. I watch for analysis. You know what I mean?
Yeah, but I mean, you can say that about any outlet that hangs on to their star. MSNBC and what's the chick's name? We always talk
Rachel
about
Maddow.
matter. So it's like, I mean, that's kind of how they do journalism. That's classic journalism, shock value shit. I get it, but I mean, I don't fault Stephen A for it because that's just who he is. Either you love him or you hate him. But I don't know that Shannon Sharp fits at ESPN either, though. I think they'll probably pay him enough to smack Fox Sports in the mouth, but I don't know.
I also think Shannon Sharp is too much of a star, too much of a personality for Stephen A. Stephen A. throws everybody out that has a personality. Like he likes bums up there with him. He likes garbage ass dudes. Like what's that ex quarterback dude that always be trying to talk to him about dressing?
Oh, the one for the Lions, Dan Orlovsky.
Dan Orlovsky.
Him, the
Like Dan
ex
Orlovsky.
Cowboys player, was it Spencer or something? Not Spencer.
No,
Marcus Spears.
Marcus Spears. They call him
Spears. Like,
Swagoo.
yeah, he likes bums on there. Like, the only person that goes on there that has any personality, but it still cowers to him is Michael Irvin. Like, Stephen A. He don't want somebody on there that's gonna could potentially challenge him and make for to be a second star. Max was there, and I thought him and Max did a great job, and he got rid of Max, because Max challenged him. Like, Stephen, I think he wants weak people. So I think
I
for
mean, it's the
me,
same thing with Skip, though. That's part of Skip's problem. Because I've seen
yeah,
some people saying that Shannon has started, like, people are watching the show. Because, I mean, when you think about it, the one thing that Stephen A. always gets to hang his hat on, especially like when JJ Redick goes at him, when they, oh, you never played, he played ball in college. Yeah, he never played in the NBA, but he played ball at least, right? Whereas a guy like Skip, or, to y'all point, when I bring up like Nick Wright and stuff, these guys are just talking heads. They're people who are around greatness and reported on it, but they never have been close to it. You know what I mean?
mhm.
And so it seems like Skip is that same way too, to where his star has risen and he don't want the next person to be on equal footing with him, and Fox empowers him to be able to be like that, because this whole shit, it seems like, blew up with the whole Skip talking shit to him when they got into it about Tom Brady. But when the story is told at the end of the day, it's gonna seem like it was Shannon's fault.
Yeah, I don't know where he will fit. Honestly, Shannon Sharp at this point, I'm trying to think of who could co-host with him, and I'm starting to, because the thing is, you're gonna need that camera presence.
Mm-hmm.
Shannon Sharp is not your camera presence guy. Sort of like Michael Irvin is not your camera presence guy. That's not your media guy. That's just the guy that has some knowledge. So he's
You
gonna
know what
need
else
someone to do
though?
the talking.
On ESPN, like, I used to watch this show like religiously, and I don't really watch it anymore now. That 5 o'clock hour where they have Around the Horn and then they have PTI. Both of those
Mm.
shows are kind of old and stale. Maybe you get rid of them and you slot Shannon in for his own shit there.
Yeah, but he still needs someone to talk. Like Shannon can't he can't Shannon can't be your talker. Like he's not your host to
Mm-hmm.
me. He's gonna I don't think he ever, maybe he did. And if he did, it doesn't show that he did any type of like,
Well, no,
classes,
you set them up like First Take and like Undisputed, where you have a host who introduces the topic, and then it's just Shannon and somebody else going back
Oh
and
yeah,
forth
yeah.
about
You're
whatever.
right, that could work.
I wonder if he's gonna take an entire pivot from something totally different, like maybe like Michael Strahan route in like a daytime. I could see him
I can
Mm.
see
being
that.
on a daytime type joint with uh a safe white or woman of some kind, and it's about fashion, it's about other stuff that he likes to do, and because he's marketable to white folks, especially white women, being in his physique and all of that kind of shit. Like I could see them doing
That's a
something
good
like
point.
that.
You know where I can see it happening at too? On that CBS morning show with Gail King. Get rid of Nate Burleson and throw in Shannon.
I like
And I
Nate
guess
Burleson, man. That dude is
Nate Nate
he's
Burleson
found
is
his way.
fire. He's fire
Yeah.
for sure. But I don't know about getting rid of them specifically. But I mean something of that nature is what I was referring
Actually,
to.
he could go to NFL Network and go to what is that? NFL Morning or AM, whatever the wake up one is, like with the two white dudes and K.
Yeah, I couldn't see him surviving there because he wouldn't respect them too. Because I think one of them dudes played at like Princeton, and Shannon wouldn't fuck with them. I couldn't see it
Well, that's where
because I
Burleson
think that's why
was.
Nate left. I think that's why Nate left though, because they didn't respect his take, and he would often be like, "You motherfuckers don't know what you're talking about."
Yeah.
Like
Maybe Shannon Sharp ends up on like a Thursday night football or Monday night football type of thing too. I don't know, but
Thursday night could be good for
Yeah.
him.
you're gonna need it, especially now that they're talking about switching up Thursday nights a little bit. Maybe you get a high profile guy in there from NFL, and see what he could do.
Yeah.
But
Or shit, maybe he's talking to Amazon getting all these deals with the NFL. Maybe they decide to do their own shit and he becomes the star of Amazon's NFL coverage or some shit,
yeah, no doubt,
Mm-hmm.
no doubt.
You gonna do
Uh,
something?
Yeah. He got
anything
the
else
interview
to?
chops because I mean, like EJ said, that Club Shay Shay shit. He interviews well,
Yeah,
So I think he could do it.
for sure. I think whatever he does, Steve Harvey is in his ear because Steve Harvey gives a lot of people insight for shit, and
Mhm.
he just interviewed Steve, so I wouldn't be surprised if Steve gets him on some network somehow, somewhere, on a 1 o'clock slot for House Moms. You know what I mean? Because that shit matters. They like that shit.
Yeah.
So yeah. Mm-hmm. I'm surprised he was even at Fox in the first place because y'all know how I felt about Fox. I think that's where all the good old boys go to die. Colin Cowherd, Will, whatever his name was. What's the dude's name? Will, can't think of his name. That was at ESPN.
Kane.
Uh, Will Kane. I always said that network, Colin Cowherd, Will Kane, Skip, they have all had a checkered history to me of saying borderline prejudice, racist type shit. And I just think Fox Sports One is the place where all of them type dudes go to. Even Acho, you know what I mean, who just says outlandish shit. And he's one of them guys that they tolerate and they accept. But I was surprised that Shannon was there in the first place, man. I just don't like that network. I think that's where all
Yeah.
the good old boys go after they got a little tap on the wrist, and that's where they go.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably one of those things where I mean, it's not like while there are a bunch of options in media, you got to try to get in where you fit in. It's maybe you start there, get your feet wet,
Absolutely.
build some
And they was gonna
profile.
pay, and they was gonna pay him some money. They paid him good money. We got to be sure of that to sit opposite Skip for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
So
sure.
Anything else
Well,
it was
for
something.
today?
Can't think of it. There was something, but I cannot think of it. Can't think of it.
You think the market bounces back nicely tomorrow, VP, because of the debt ceiling? Not bounces back because it's actually been pretty damn good lately. But you think it maintains?
I think it's going to pull back some. The market kind of went crazy last week with what happened with Nvidia when they announced their second quarter or first quarter numbers, as well as their projections for the out years with AI and stuff like that. The market just kind of exploded. So I think it needs to kind of pull back a little bit and have a little bit of a reset. Plus,
Stabilize a
yeah,
little bit.
plus you're getting ready to come into quad witching. That's quadruple witching. That's getting ready to happen. So we'll see. But I think it pulls back slightly.
Okay. All right. Well, if there's nothing else, VP, I'm gonna give you the reins to do what you do best.
All right,
You don't
everybody. We
research well.
definitely We definitely appreciate you guys for rocking with us on this week's episode of the Cast Ready Podcast. For the folks who joined live and comment in the chat, we definitely appreciate you guys taking that time out of your Sunday morning. Shout out to LeVar and shout out to our man Chris, who's been one of the dedicated folks who follow us all the time. For those who listen once the episode posts, we appreciate you guys taking that time as well. You can find this podcast on all podcasting platforms by searching Castworthy. You also can find us on any of our social media by searching at Castworthy. On Instagram, it's at Castworthy_podcast. While you're there, you can leave us a like, comment, share, subscribe, follow, tell a friend, tell a friend. We very much would appreciate it. Hit the like button. It definitely helps the algorithm with us reaching more people and helping us grow the audience. So we definitely would appreciate if you do so. As always, like we've been saying for a while now, make that phone call, send that text message, reach out to somebody, let them know you're thinking about them. You never know how somebody is feeling. You never know what they're going through in their own head. And I'm pretty sure they'd be happy to hear from you, and you'll be happy once you've had a chance to reconnect with that person. Whatever it was, let that shit go. It's not that important. With that said, we will see you guys on the next episode of the Castworthy Podcast. Go Heat tonight, and we're out. We love you, and we'll see you next week.